The fog drifts in first, not the soft kind that tickles the cheeks, but the kind that settles like velvet, heavy, fragrant, waiting to cradle the city in its hush. Then comes the smell: pine needles, roasted chestnuts, and the faint tang of melting snow. A market at dusk, a place that hums with life even when no one is looking. Somewhere beneath the arches, a child's laughter curls into the lantern light. Another voice begins to hum, a carol hesitant, quivering, and perfect in its imperfection. Footsteps scuffle through frost, coins clink in tin cups, and the faint whistle of a wind-up train spins across the cobbles. The market moves like a secret being shared, small and intimate, yet unstoppable. Candles flicker in the stalls like tiny suns, ribbons dance like flames, and music drifts through the night like a spell. The Victorian Christmas Market stretches across the square, alive in scent, light, and memory. It is the empire's warmth in the midst of frost, its quiet rebellion against cold and hardship, a place where joy is carved by hand and traded with hope. They said it was cheer, they said it was tradition, but joy has shadows, and tradition carries the weight of every life that has ever wandered the cobbles. The music swells and fades, the laughter lingers, and the glow of lanterns flickers against the white. Memories slip between stalls and windows, whispering stories of families, lovers, and strangers whose paths have crossed beneath the gaslight. So tonight, keep your eyes open and your breath soft. Listen to the echoes in the snow, the hum of the carolers, the crackle of fires behind frosted glass, because this is where it all begins, the magic of the Victorian Christmas Market, where light meets cold, music meets memory, and the city remembers how to feel alive again. Subscribe and stay with me. There are more streets to wander, more carols to hear, and more winter nights that hold secrets. Tell me, where are you watching from tonight? The magic of the past is never far away. The frost came quietly that year, as if it had been listening at the windows all night, waiting for the world to sleep. When you wake, the glass is rimmed with white lace, delicate and cruel. You touch it, and it melts beneath your fingertip, leaving behind a single clear bead that runs like a tear. The breath from your mouth fogs the air, mingling with the faint scent of coal smoke and yesterday's bread. Somewhere outside, a cart rattles over frozen stones, the iron wheels shrieking against the cold. You pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders and listen. The city is never truly silent, not even in winter, but this morning it feels held in place, the streets muffled beneath snow, the air so still that every sound arrives like a secret. Somewhere, church bells toll the slow rhythm of dawn. Somewhere, a kettle begins to sing. It is the week before Christmas, and even the poorest rooms seem to hum with a strange, expectant light. Through the frost-blurred window, London lies in shades of pewter and pearl. Roofs glitter like sugar, and chimney smoke drifts sideways in ribbons. In the distance, the spire of St. Martin's pierces the low clouds, its bell calling bakers, porters, and market women out into the cold. The city is stirring a million footsteps, beginning their slow procession toward the heart of winter. Down by the river, the first wagons arrive, their wooden wheels carving paths through the slush. Men in wool caps unload crates of oranges, ribbons, and paper toys. The scent of pine and spice follows them through the air, clinging to their coats. A woman with chapped hands sets up her stall, laying out candied nuts and small glass ornaments that shimmer even in the weak daylight. The frost catches the light like glitter, and for a moment, the whole street seems dusted in gold. The shopkeepers sweep their thresholds, the children run ahead of the lamplighter, and a fiddler tunes his instrument with trembling fingers. The city feels alive again, not with wealth or ease, but with the fragile joy of those who have learned to find beauty where it hides. A match girl warms her hands over a gutter flame. A sweep whistles as he carries his brush. Somewhere a brass band begins to play the opening notes of Good King Wenceslas, the tune floating through the narrow streets like smoke from a hearth. And yet, beneath the carols and laughter, The air carries another kind of sound, the faint crackle of boots on ice, the sigh of wind through alleyways, the heartbeat of a city built on endurance. You can feel it in your bones, this quiet defiance, this collective warmth kindled against the endless grey. By midday, the frost will have melted from the window, the markets will blaze with colour, and the gas lamps will glow even before dusk. But for now, in this breathless moment between dark and day, the city waits, holding its breath beneath the frozen morning, listening for the first true sound of Christmas. He comes before the sun, before even the milkman or the chimney's first cough of smoke. The lantern man. You hear him long before you see him, the slow, rhythmic clack of his boots echoing down the sleeping street. The sound is hollow, like wood knocking on wood, steady as a heartbeat in the fog. He carries his ladder over one shoulder and a bundle of tapers in the other, his breath curling in white wisps before him. The lamps hang like glass fruit above the cobblestones, each one dull and waiting. One by one, he climbs, balances, and strikes the match. The first flame sputters hesitant, like a thought half remembered, then steadies into gold. The glass catches it, magnifies it, and suddenly the street is no longer empty but alive with light. The frost on the window panes begins to glisten, and the silhouettes of sleepers shift behind thin curtains. London is waking. He moves from post to post, his hands blackened with soot, his eyes reflecting every flame he births. The job is thankless, the pay meager, but in his way, he is a kind of priest, tending to his congregation of lamps, bringing day into the night's forgotten corners. Sometimes children leave him bread on the steps, sometimes no one sees him at all, but still he lights them, because that is his purpose. Behind him trails the faint scent of wax and smoke. The air tastes faintly of iron and winter rain. Around the corner, the butcher's shutters creak open, and a woman begins to sweep snow from her doorstep, her broom bristling against the stone. The lantern man nods to her, a small, wordless gesture of recognition, the communion of those who rise early because they must. By the time he reaches the market square, the city has changed. The gas lamps along the main road already burn steady, glowing through the fog like a string of stars fallen to earth. A baker wipes flour from his sleeves and hums a carol under his breath. Across the way, a line of children waits with baskets for the first oranges of the day, bright little suns in the grey dawn. He pauses a moment to watch them. The smallest boy, nose red and raw, presses his face to the glass of a toy stall, eyes wide at the sight of wooden horses and painted drums. The lantern man smiles, the kind of smile that warms the air but leaves no trace. Then he shoulders his ladder again and keeps moving. There are still streets to brighten, alleys where the dark lingers like breath on glass. As he disappears into the mist, the market begins to hum. The cries of vendors rise and fall like waves. Hot chestnuts, ribbons, fine ribbons, fresh bread, 2 pennies a loaf. The city that was silent an hour ago now glows with motion, colour, and sound, and none of it would exist without those first small flames. By dusk, when the fog thickens and frost bites once more at the eaves, he will return the same quiet man with the same steady steps to snuff out the light he gave. But for now, his lamps burn bright across the waking city, each one a fragile miracle in the cold. By the time the morning frost has softened into slush, the air of the market has changed. It moves differently now, thick with breath, with laughter, with the warmth of 1,000 small fires. From every direction comes a scent, sharp and sweet, tangled together until you can no longer tell where one ends and another begins. It is the smell of a Victorian Christmas morning, of spice and smoke, of sugar and coal. A man in a wool cap roasts chestnuts over a blackened drum, the shells cracking softly as he stirs them with a spoon. The sound is gentle, like rain tapping at a window. Steam rises in slow curls, carrying the scent of wood ash and caramel through the crisp air. Nearby, a woman sells oranges from a basket lined with green paper, rare treasures from far-off lands, bright as embers in her chapped hands. Each time she cuts one open, the air around her seems to glow, You pass a stall where candied fruits glisten beneath glass domes, light trembling against syrup and peel. A boy presses his face to the case, his reflection rippling between sugared figs and plums. The vendor catches his gaze and winks, slipping him a single candied cherry red as a drop of summer. The boy grins, his teeth bright against the soot on his cheeks, then vanishes back into the crowd before the man can change his mind. Somewhere farther down, a chimney puff of smoke reveals the toffee maker's kettle. He works with bare, reddened hands, stretching the golden strands until they catch the light like spun glass. The air around him crackles with heat and laughter. Even the horses pulling delivery carts slow for a moment, their nostrils flaring at the sweetness. And beneath it all, a deeper scent: coal dust, damp wool, the faint metallic taste of the river, the kind of smell that never quite leaves the lungs, that belongs to the city itself. London breathes through its chimneys and exhales through its markets. Its perfume is survival, layered, imperfect, unforgettable. Every breath you take carries a story. You taste cinnamon from a baker's stall where loaves of spiced bread cool on iron racks. You smell cloves, nutmeg, and orange peel steeping in a pot of mulled wine. The vendor ladles the deep red liquid into tin cups, its surface rippling with the reflection of nearby lamps. You raise it to your lips and feel it burn softly down your throat, heat spreading into your chest like courage. A fiddler begins to play near the corner, his bow dancing across the strings in a tune that sounds older than memory. Around him, the crowd shifts, strangers drawing closer, shoulders brushing, breath mingling in the cold. The music wraps around them all like invisible silk, warm and thin and fleeting. When the song ends, no one claps. They only smile, quiet, content, and drift away into the smoke and spice once more. By midday, the market is alive with color. Ribbons, glass, pine branches, brass instruments. The air feels thick enough to touch, heavy, with the scent of roasted apples and the faint sting of soot. It clings to your hair, your gloves, your very skin. You will carry it home with you tonight, this mixture of sweetness and sorrow, proof that even in the heart of winter, something human still burns. By the time the church bells ring 9, the heart of the city has turned into a maze of light and wood. The first market stalls rise like a forest in bloom, narrow tables dressed in red cloth, propped beneath iron arches heavy with frost. The air hums with the sound of nails being hammered, crates splitting open, and laughter echoing off stone. It is the sound of work that feels like worship. Each merchant, each craftsman, preparing their offering for Christmas. You watch as a man unloads a cart filled with fir branches, their scent sharp and green against the coal smoke. He wipes his brow with a sleeve, breathes into his hands, then begins to weave garlands that will hang above the stalls by noon. Beside him, a woman arranges candles in rows, their wax catching the weak morning light. She tests one, striking a match, and for a moment, her face glows gold. Children weave between legs and ladders, chasing each other through the forming aisles. A little girl stops to help a spotters baker stack loaves of sugared bread, her small fingers dusted in flour. He rewards her with a roll still warm from the oven, steam curling through the air as she runs off laughing. By mid-morning, the wooden tables are alive with color. Here, bolts of velvet shimmer like spilled ink. There, ribbons flutter in the wind like tiny flags of joy. The toy sellers polish their wares: painted horses, wooden trains, spinning tops that hum when set loose on the table. The glassblower's apprentice unwraps delicate ornaments, each one shaped like a tear of frozen light. He holds one up, and the reflection of the crowd blooms inside it, upside down, glittering, eternal. The market breathes as one great body. Voices rise and fall like the sea calls for customers, bursts of laughter, the steady rhythm of coins clinking in tin boxes. The sound of horses and carriage wheels mingles with the metallic notes of a street organ, its crank turning in perfect time with the heartbeat of the crowd. And over it all, the smell, pine and orange, wax and smoke, the faint sweetness of roasted sugar. An old man leans on his cane at the edge of the square, watching the stalls take shape. He's seen 20 Christmases like this one, and yet each feels new. It's the light, he murmurs to no one. The way it finds us, even here. His words vanish into the wind, but the sentiment stays, for even in the soot-streaked winter, the market glows as if touched by grace. As noon nears, the fog begins to lift. Sunlight, pale but steady, filters through the clouds, striking the tops of the stalls and turning frost to diamonds. The lamplighter from earlier passes by again, his ladder now slung low, smiling faintly at the transformation. What was once a dark, empty square has become something holy, a cathedral without walls, filled with the hymns of ordinary people. Their faith is simple, in bread and warmth, in laughter and light, in the belief that for a few days each year, life can be beautiful again. And as the first customers begin to arrive, women with baskets, soldiers on leave, children clutching coins, the market awakens in full. The day is theirs now, gilded in sunlight and breath, and beneath the sound of commerce and cheer, the air hums with something ancient, something kind. It is not merely trade that has begun, but Christmas itself. At the edge of the market, where the smell of coal fades into the sweetness of bread, there is a small wooden shop with fogged glass windows and a painted sign that simply reads "Toys." It's easy to miss if you walk too fast, but if you pause, you'll hear it, a faint, wavering tune rising from inside. The toy maker is singing again. He hums as he works, his voice rough but warm, weaving through the soft rhythm of his tools. His hands move with the careful grace of someone who has built joy for a living, smoothing the edge of a wooden horse, painting the cheeks of a doll, tightening the wheels of a toy carriage no bigger than his thumb. Around him, the shelves bloom with color, blues, reds, greens, all dulled slightly by sawdust drifting through the air like snow. The workshop smells of pine and varnish, a scent both sharp and comforting. On the stove in the corner, a kettle rattles gently, its whistle never quite reaching a full cry. Beside it sits a tin mug, half filled with cold tea. The toy maker doesn't drink much while he works. He says it spoils the rhythm. His world is a quiet one, measured not in hours but in brushstrokes and carvings, each movement a promise that something small and good can still be made in a city that forgets such things. Outside his window, the market hums laughter, brass music, horses snorting in the cold. But inside, time slows. The only sound is the scratch of a file and the whisper of the man's song. It is not a carol, not quite. It is older, a tune his mother used to hum while sewing, back when the world was smaller and the winters longer. On the table beside him lies a row of finished toys, a drum painted scarlet, a wooden bird whose wings move when wound, a set of soldiers lined in perfect attention. He picks one up, inspects the brushwork, then places it gently in a crate marked for the Christmas market. Every piece he makes will be sold before nightfall, but that isn't why he works. He builds for the moment a child's eyes widen for the gasp, the smile, the small miracle of wonder reborn. The door creaks open and a gust of cold air rushes in, carrying the sound of carols. A little boy stands hesitantly on the threshold, one mitten missing, a coin clutched tight in his hand. The toy maker looks up, smiling. "Come in, lad," he says softly. "You look frozen through." The boy points to a wooden bird on the table. "Does it really fly?" The toy maker chuckles. "Only in dreams, but that's better than wings, I think." He wraps the toy in brown paper, ties it with a ribbon, and slips it into the boy's hands. When the boy opens his palm to offer the coin, the toy maker shakes his head. "Keep it," he murmurs, "for luck." When the boy leaves, the man sits back down, his tools waiting patiently in their row. He hums the tune again, softer this time, his voice barely louder than the whisper of the snow falling outside. By nightfall, the shelves will be empty, and the market's music will fade into the frost. But the toy maker will still be there, carving by candlelight, the song in his chest, the warmth in his work, and the faint hope that somewhere, in the dark, A child is smiling because of him. By mid-afternoon, the air beneath Covent Garden's stone arches hums with breath and echoes. The fog that had rolled in from the river hangs low, softening the gaslight into halos. Beneath them, a group of boys gather in wool coats too thin for the season, clutching sheet music that trembles in their gloved hands. They are the choir children from St. Giles Parish, come to sing for pennies and hope. The choir master, a narrow man with silver hair and ink-stained cuffs, taps his baton against a music stand. The sound rings sharp as crystal. "Once more, lads," he says, his voice low, patient. "From the start, and remember, not too fast. The city will listen if you give it time." The boys straighten their backs, faces pale but earnest, and the first note rises, clear as frost. The sound drifts upward, winding around the iron beams, brushing the frost that clings to their edges. It expands, it lingers, it softens the edges of the crowd gathering nearby. Shoppers pause, mid-bargain. Vendors look up from their wares, and even the carriage horses outside shift their hooves, as if listening. The voices are thin, yes, the kind shaped by hunger and cold, but together they are pure. In the bleak midwinter, frosty wind made moan. Their song fills the arches like light through stained glass. It wraps around the market, around the smell of roasted chestnuts, around the laughter of children, around the clinking of coins, until everything seems to move in rhythm with it. For a moment, even the poorest listener stands taller, lifted by something invisible. The choirmaster lowers his baton, nodding slightly. His eyes glimmer in the dim light. Behind him, the smallest boy coughs, pressing a fist to his mouth before returning to the verse without missing a note. The sound trembles, but does not break. At the edge of the crowd, a young woman in a green shawl stops to listen. She drops a copper penny into the wooden bowl at their feet. It rings, softly, then settles beside a few others, not enough to fill a stomach, but enough to keep singing. She smiles at the boys, and one of them, red-cheeked and shy, smiles back. A warm draught from the nearby bakery sweeps through the arches, carrying the scent of bread and sugar. The music mingles with it, sweet and fleeting, as if the air itself wants to remember. When the final note fades, the crowd exhales all at once, a single, quiet sound of gratitude. Then applause breaks out, polite but genuine, echoing through the old stone like a promise. The boys bow awkwardly. The choirmaster collects the few coins, dividing them evenly into small paper envelopes. "For your supper," he murmurs, placing one into each waiting hand. The children scatter back into the city, into the fog, into the cold, into the thousand unnamed streets where they live and sleep. When night falls, the arches will empty again. The music will fade, replaced by the rattle of carts and the hiss of gas lamps. But if you walk through at the right moment, when the air is still and the frost thickens on the stones, you might hear them again, not with your ears, but in the quiet of your chest. The faint echo of a hymn sung by children who believed, if only for a verse, that their voices could make the world gentler. And for that hour beneath the arches, it truly was. They arrive wrapped in straw and silence, hundreds of wooden crates stacked like treasure chests in the damp morning fog. The labels are foreign, the handwriting elegant: Valencia, Seville, Cadiz. Inside them, the promise of sunlight, oranges, bright and perfect, their skins gleaming like captured fire. For a moment, the docks themselves seem to glow. Even the dock hands, tired from lifting and hauling through the cold, pause to look. It is December in London, yet here is the scent of summer. By mid-morning, the fruit finds its way to the Christmas market. The merchants handle them with reverence, arranging them atop blankets of evergreen, each one turning gently under gloved fingers. Crowds begin to gather almost immediately. The rich come first, their boots polished, their laughter easy. They buy oranges by the dozen, their baskets quickly filled. But it is the poor who linger longest, children with red noses and hungry eyes, staring at the fruit as though it were made of gold. One orange costs a penny. A penny is a loaf of bread, a candle, a night's coal. And yet, for one day a year, many trade necessity for wonder. The mothers choose carefully, lifting each fruit to their faces to breathe in the scent. It smells like warmth, like faraway places untouched by soot or frost. When they carry it home, they will place it in the center of the table, untouched, a symbol, not of plenty, but of hope. A young girl in a patched shawl presses close to the stall. She stands on her toes to see better, her mittened hands folded in front of her. The vendor notices her and grins. "One for you, miss?" he teases. She shakes her head shyly, backing away. But when he turns to serve another customer, she feels a tap on her shoulder. An old woman, her face lined like folded paper, holds out a coin. "Go on," she whispers. "Buy your son." The girl hesitates, then approaches the counter. The vendor, seeing the coin, wraps one orange in a square of newspaper and hands it down to her. It feels heavier than she imagined, the skin dimpled and cool. She thanks him softly and disappears into the crowd. Later, she will sit by the fire and peel it slowly, her small room filling with a fragrance that could make her forget the chill outside. All across the city, the ritual repeats. In parlors and workhouses, in bakeries and street corners, oranges appear hung with ribbons, tucked into stockings, placed beside a candle's glow. For one night, the city smells not of coal or damp wool, but of citrus and joy. By evening, the last of the crates lie empty. The vendor's voice has gone hoarse from calling, but his smile remains. He closes his stall and pockets a single orange, saving it for his wife. In a world of soot and sorrow, the orange is more than fruit. It is a memory of light, a taste of summer carried across oceans to a winter that forgot warmth. And when its skin is peeled, its sweetness fills not just the room, but the weary heart that remembers what hope tastes like. As the bells of St. Martin's strike the hour, the marketplace seems to pulse with joy, laughter spilling from every corner, carols chasing the scent of roasted nuts, and coins clinking like wind chimes in unseen pockets. But beneath the sound of merriment lies another rhythm, quieter and heavier, the rhythm of hunger, of weariness, of sacrifice. For every ribbon tied and candle lit, someone has paid a price they could scarcely afford. At the edge of the square, near the horse's watering trough, a woman stands beside a cart piled high with lace and scraps of fabric. Her fingers, raw from stitching, tug nervously at the threads of her shawl. She sells trimmings and ribbons for a penny each, hoping to earn enough to buy bread before the day ends. Every time a customer passes without stopping, she lowers her eyes, ashamed of wanting. The market glitters with gold, but her world is grey, held together by string and faith. Not far from her, a chimney sweep sits on a curb, his soot-blackened hands cradling a small brown paper parcel. Inside lies a gift for his mother, a single orange, bought with the last of his wages. His stomach growls, but he smiles faintly, imagining her face when she unwraps it. Above him, the laughter of gentlemen echoes through the air, deep and careless. Their boots splash through puddles that could feed him for a week. A baker's apprentice, no older than 12, hurries past, carrying a tray of sugared buns. His breath fogs in the cold, his apron dusted with flour. He will work until midnight, sleep by the oven, and rise before dawn. His master promises him a half loaf for his labor, and, if business is good, a crust dipped in molasses. He hums a tune as he goes, because in this city, cheer is not a feeling but a duty. The carolers arrive again near dusk, their voices bright but their cheeks pale. Each note earns a few coins tossed into their tin cup, and though they smile between verses, their fingers tremble from the cold. One of them, a girl with hair the color of honey, stumbles near the final refrain. The choirmaster steadies her, his gloved hand over hers. "Almost done," he murmurs. "Keep singing, child." She nods and finishes the song, her breath visible with every word. And through it all, the wealthy stroll past, their laughter buoyant, their hands full of packages tied in ribbon and wax seals. They speak of parties, of puddings, of gifts wrapped in silk. They rarely notice the ragged figures who built this beauty, who clean their boots, sweep their chimneys, mend their gloves. The poor are ghosts in daylight, their smiles as thin as candlelight in the fog. When night finally settles, the last of the merchants pack away their goods. The woman with the lace has sold just enough to buy bread. The sweep heads home with his parcel. The carolers disappear into the mist, and the city grows quiet again. Tomorrow, the market will return its light, its music, its warmth. But, tonight, behind darkened windows and cold hearths, the cost of that cheer will be counted in empty pockets and aching hands. And yet, somehow, they will return, because even hunger can't silence the need for joy. In the heart of winter, cheer is not given. It is fought for, penny by penny, breath by breath, in a city that celebrates even as it starves. When the lamps are lit and the frost begins to creep back across the cobblestones, the music returns to Snow Hill. It always begins with a single note, a violin string tightening, a breath drawn through a cracked reed, and then the street seems to awaken again, like an old friend stirring in the cold. The musicians come from everywhere and nowhere. A fiddler from Whitechapel with a limp, an old man who coaxes hymns from a wheezing concertina, two brothers with dented brass horns, and a girl who plays a penny whistle so softly that stray dogs follow her through the alleys. They gather beneath the archway near the market, where the air smells of soot and oranges. Their fingers are red, their clothes patched, their instruments held together with faith and twine. But when they play, the cold fades. The music rises from their circle like breath trembling, human, alive. The tune begins as something familiar, a carol, perhaps, but it changes as it goes, twisting and blooming, like a story told by many tongues. The violin weaves sorrow, the horn replies with laughter, the concertina sighs, the whistle dances. People stop to listen, coins glinting in their palms. Some toss them into the open violin case, some simply close their eyes and smile. Even the horses seem to slow, their breath steaming like incense in the gaslight. Across the way, a group of factory girls lingers, their shawls pulled tight around their shoulders. They sway to the rhythm, soft smiles breaking through the day's fatigue. One of them begins to hum, hesitant at first, then louder. The fiddler hears and shifts the key, inviting her in. Soon, her friends join her, their voices threading through the music like ribbons through evergreen. For a moment, Snow Hill feels almost holy, as though the world itself has forgotten its troubles to listen. When the song ends, there is a hush, that fragile, shimmering silence that lives only after beauty. Then, softly, the applause begins. Gloved hands, bare hands, small hands. A man in a top hat drops a shilling into the case. A child follows, placing a single button beside it, thinking it might help. The musicians bow their heads in thanks, eyes bright in the lamplight. The old man with the concertina clears his throat and begins another tune, slower this time, tender as a prayer. It is a melody for the unseen, for the mothers waiting at home, for the hungry, for the weary souls who have forgotten how to sing. The notes drift upward, caught by the fog, and vanish somewhere above the rooftops. When the last chord fades, they pack their instruments carefully, their movements practiced and wordless. The brothers tuck their horns beneath their coats. The fiddler ties his scarf twice around his neck. The girl with the penny whistle lingers, playing a few quiet notes to herself before walking away into the mist. By the time the lamps burn low, Snow Hill is empty again. Only the echo of the music remains, carried on the cold wind that moves through London's heart. Those who heard it will remember, though, the warmth that bloomed in the frost, the sound that made strangers still their steps, the proof that even in the bleakest season, beauty survives, fragile, fleeting, but enough. And somewhere, down another dark street, another song begins. He appears in the dawn light, a small silhouette against the smoke. His name is Thomas, though most call him Tom, and at 12 years old he already carries the stoop of a man twice his age. The soot clings to him like a shadow that will not let go in his hair, under his nails, in the small cracks of his hands. He was born to it, just as his father was before him, and now his days belong to the chimneys of London. The morning is sharp with frost. The rooftops glimmer like pewter as he climbs the narrow lane toward the workhouse where his master waits. A sack slung over his shoulder holds his brushes and scraper, the tools that feed him but steal the air from his lungs. The smell of coal is thick and bitter. His breath comes in short bursts. Still, he hums softly to himself an old tune he half remembers from his mother, something about a star and a wish. The first house is large, the kind with marble steps and curtains that never close. The lady of the house doesn't look at him as she opens the door, only gestures to the hearth and disappears. He kneels without a word. His master watches from the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Mind the flue," he mutters. No mistakes this time. Tom crawls in. The world shrinks to darkness and soot. Every scrape of the brush sounds like a heartbeat. His shoulders ache, his knees slip on the cold brick, and still he keeps moving upward, inch by inch. The air grows thinner, the soot thicker, until it feels like he is breathing through cloth. When at last he sees the pale circle of sky above, he pauses just long enough to feel the wind on his face, sharp and clean. For a moment, he forgets the dark. By the time he climbs down, his face is streaked with sweat and ash. The lady returns, drops a coin into his hand without meeting his eyes, and closes the door. His master takes the coin, as always, but Tom barely notices. He's thinking of something else, something he saw in the market the night before. A candle, small and plain, sitting in a window stall. It had cost 1 penny, one he did not have, but he remembers the way its flame had glowed against the glass, golden and alive. His mother's birthday is tonight. He has nothing else to give. That afternoon, when the work is done and the master's back is turned, Tom slips away. He runs through the narrow alleys, his small hand clutched around the coin he's managed to keep hidden. When he reaches the market, the vendor is closing up, his breath misting in the cold. "Still got that candle?" Tom asks, breathless. The man nods and wraps it in brown paper. At home, a single room behind a row of boarding houses. Tom's mother sits by the hearth, her cough soft but steady. When he hands her the candle, she laughs through tears. "It's beautiful," she whispers. He lights it himself, watching as the flame dances, tiny and brave against the dark. Outside, the wind moans through the chimneys he's climbed all day. Inside, the little room glows just enough light for 2 faces, one small, one tired, both warmed by its flicker. The candle burns slowly, and Tom smiles, soot-streaked and proud. For the first time in a long while, he feels clean, not on his skin, but somewhere deeper. In a city that forgets its poor, one candle burns for them still, held in the hands of a chimney sweep who gave his mother the only gift he could afford, light. The fog comes early that morning, rolling off the Thames like a living thing, swallowing the lamplight one post at a time. The market still sleeps, its stalls draped in damp canvas, its colours muted beneath a film of frost. But through the quiet, a sound begins to rise, faint at first, then steady. A bell. A small, tinny chime that seems to echo from nowhere and everywhere at once. It belongs to an old man who stands at the edge of the square, wrapped in a coat that might once have been blue but now hangs in tatters. His beard is white, his eyes pale and almost sightless. In one hand, he holds a walking stick worn smooth by years of use. In the other, the bell tied to a fraying string. He rings it with slow, deliberate motion, the rhythm as familiar to him as breathing. Between rings, he hums softly to himself, a hymn, perhaps, or a memory disguised as song. The first to pass him are the bakers and the sweepers, their carts creaking under the weight of flour and brooms. Some nod in greeting, some pretend not to see. A boy tosses him a crust of bread. The old man catches it with surprising grace and tucks it into his pocket. "Bless you, lad," he murmurs, his voice rasping like sand against stone. By midday, the market is alive again. The bell becomes just another sound blending with laughter, shouts, the rustle of coins. But if you listen closely, it never quite fades. It cuts through the noise like a thread of silver, binding all that chaos together. Children are the first to notice him properly. They gather near his feet, wide-eyed and whispering. He tells them stories about angels that walk among beggars, about a Christmas so bright it could melt the frost from a window with a single song. His words are soft, but they carry. Even the grown-ups pause now and then, pretending to look at the fruit stall while their ears lean toward his voice. A woman selling candles leaves her booth for a moment to bring him a cup of tea. He holds it carefully, inhaling the steam as if it were incense. "The world forgets," he says quietly, "but the heart remembers kindness. Always." The woman doesn't answer. She only smiles, presses a coin into his hand, and returns to her stall. As evening falls, the fog returns. The crowd thins. The air grows colder. The old man moves toward the church steps at the far end of the square. There he kneels, setting his bell beside him. He bows his head and begins to sing, not for money now, but for mercy. His voice is cracked but haunting, filling the empty streets with something that sounds like prayer. When the last note fades, he closes his eyes. Snow begins to fall, slow, deliberate, soft. It dusts his shoulders, his hat, the bell. The sound it makes when it strikes the metal is delicate as breath. A few passers-by stop to watch, unsure whether to wake him or let him rest. In the end, they simply listen. By dawn, the bell is silent. The market stirs, the stalls reopen, and life resumes its rhythm. But some swear that if you walk through Covent Garden on a winter morning, before the city is fully awake, you can still hear that faint metallic chime, steady, patient, unending. The beggar may be gone, but his bell remains, echoing through the fog like a heartbeat, a small, persistent reminder that charity, like music, never truly dies. Far from the fog and noise of the London markets, Windsor Castle sits wrapped in frost and silence. Its towers gleam pale against the winter sky, each battlement edged with ice. Inside, the great halls glow with candlelight, hundreds of flames trembling within crystal chandeliers, reflected in mirrors taller than men. The scent of pine, beeswax, and roasting game hangs thick in the air. Servants move like clockwork shadows, adjusting garlands, polishing silver, stoking the fires that burn in every room. For all its grandeur, the castle feels strangely hushed, as though even the stone walls are holding their breath. It is Christmas Eve, and Queen Victoria has risen early. Her handmaid laces her gown, velvet the color of midnight, while outside, the royal band rehearses faintly in the courtyard below. Through the frosted glass, the Queen watches her people gathering in the streets beyond the castle gates. Children wave flags, their breath white in the cold. Carolers sing from beneath the torches. She smiles, though faintly. So much joy, she thinks, and yet so much unseen sorrow. Albert would have loved it, the sound of the choirs, the harmony of order and festivity. She can almost hear his voice echoing in the corridors, brisk and earnest, instructing the servants where to place the Christmas tree, how high the candles should be trimmed, how each bauble must glint just so. It was he who brought the German custom to England, the fir tree, the ornaments, the gathering of family around its branches. Even now, years after his death, the court keeps his traditions alive. In the drawing room, a towering tree stands by the window, its branches heavy with gilded apples, glass angels, and tiny wax candles that flicker like stars. The Queen pauses before it, her gloved hand tracing a ribbon that bears his initials. The fire crackles softly behind her, the warmth reaching only her face, not her heart. A small dog dozes by the hearth, its collar engraved with a royal crest. Beyond the palace, the market bells begin to ring. She hears them faintly through the walls, the same bells that once echoed through the streets of Kensington when she was a girl peering from a carriage at the city's poor. She remembers their faces, the sweet boys, the flower girls, the beggars wrapped in rags, and she wonders, as she always does, whether they too will find warmth tonight. Her ministers speak often of progress and prosperity, of empire and invention. But in moments like these, she thinks only of humanity, of how fragile joy truly is. The choir begins to sing in the chapel below. Their voices rise through the corridors, clear, devout, impossibly young. The Queen closes her eyes and listens. For a moment, the notes blur into memory. Albert laughing beside her, children's hands clapping in delight, the soft rustle of pine branches as the candles burn low. When she opens her eyes again, the music lingers, ghost-like. She takes a single, orange from the silver bowl, the same fruit her subjects prize at the markets, and turns it over in her hand. "For the children," she whispers, placing it beneath the tree. Outside, snow begins to fall on Windsor's frozen gardens. Inside, the Queen stands alone before the glow of her Christmas tree, a widow beneath a crown, watching her own reflection flicker in the candlelight. The fire crackles, the bells continue to ring, and somewhere beyond the castle walls, a child in London peels an orange and smiles. The distance between them is infinite, and yet, on Christmas Eve, somehow it feels smaller than ever. The market has quieted. The gas lamps burn low, their flames bowed beneath the fog. In a small room above a cobbler's shop, a family gathers around a wooden table scarred by years of use. The walls are thin enough that they can hear the sounds of London outside, the echo of carriage wheels, the faint hum of a distant hymn, but in here, everything feels warm and close. A single candle burns at the center of the table, its wax dripping slowly down the sides. The father calls it the Christmas sun, and the children laugh, though they know it won't last the night. They have saved for weeks to afford this supper. A small chicken, a heel of bread, and a pudding steamed over the fire. The mother places it on the table as though it were a feast fit for kings. Her hands are cracked, her face pale with the wear of long hours spent at the laundry. But when she smiles, her children see only light. "Now then," she says, "no one eats till we wear our crowns." From beneath the table, the father brings out a small parcel wrapped in newspaper and twine. Inside are 3 Christmas crackers, homemade from scraps of paper and ribbon, saved from the shop floor. The children gasp, the eldest no older than 10, the youngest barely walking. The father strikes a match and lights the ends. With a soft pop and a puff of smoke, the first cracker bursts open, scattering a paper crown, a joke, and a tiny wooden button onto the table. The children scramble for the treasures. The youngest tugs the paper crown over his head, the gold tissue too large for his tiny face. The others laugh so hard that the candle flickers. The father puts his arm around his wife's shoulders and whispers, "See, told you it'd be a royal supper." They eat slowly, savoring every bite. The mother cuts her portion small so the children can have more. The pudding is dense and sweet, the bread warm from the fire. For dessert, the father pulls from his pocket a single orange, a gift from a neighbor who works at the docks. He slices it into 4 thin wedges and places one on each plate. The juice runs down their fingers as they eat. And for a moment, they are silent, eyes closed, smiling as though they've tasted sunlight. When the plates are empty, the father lifts his tin cup in a toast. "To us," he says, "to family, to luck, and to another year." The mother joins him, her hand trembling slightly as she clinks her cup against his. The children raise theirs too, one filled with milk, another with water, the littlest clutching his with both hands. The candlelight catches their faces, making them glow. Outside, the bells of St. Paul's begin to ring. The sound rolls through the narrow streets, carrying across the rooftops and down the alleys, filling the night with something pure. The family listens in silence. The father leans back in his chair, the paper crown still crooked on his head. "That," he murmurs, "sounds like Christmas." When the last bell fades, the children are asleep by the fire, the orange peel curling on the plates beside them. The mother gathers the crowns and sets them on the windowsill, their gold edges catching the last glint of candlelight. For a moment, She imagines they are real, the crowns of a family rich in love, if not in coin. Outside, the frost creeps across the glass, but inside, the little room glows. A paper crown rests where the light meets the dark, proof that even in the humblest home, joy can reign for a night. When dusk falls, London transforms. The grey daylight fades, the frost deepens, and the city begins to glow from within a living constellation, made not of stars, but of flame. The gas lamps along the streets hiss to life one by one, their glass globes catching the fog and turning it golden. Beneath them, the Christmas market awakens for its second life, more radiant and more secret than before. The first thing you notice is the sound. The daytime clamour softens into a kind of music, footsteps over cobblestones, laughter carried on the cold air, the muffled call of a merchant haggling over ribbons. Somewhere a violin sings from a shadowed corner, its melody as fragile as breath. Every note seems to hang in the mist like spun glass. Couples walk arm in arm, their faces pink from the cold, their whispers lost beneath the crackle of lanterns. The stalls burn with colour now. Candles flicker behind panes of oiled paper. The fruits gleam like jewels under the lamplight. Oranges, pomegranates, sugared apples. Tin toys reflect the firelight, each one blinking like a tiny eye. The glass ornaments shimmer and sway with the wind, throwing rainbows onto the snow. Even the smoke from the vendors' fires glows amber as it rises into the dark, mingling with the music and the laughter until all of it becomes one living thing, a pulse, a heartbeat, a warmth against the endless cold. Near the center of the square, a man with a barrel organ cranks out a song of merriment, his breath fogging in rhythm with the tune. A crowd gathers, children, sailors, housemaids, clapping along in uneven time. Coins drop into his cup, their metallic ring keeping pace with the music. When the song ends, he bows low, tipping his hat. The children cheer, and someone hands him a cup of mulled wine. He drinks deeply, then begins again. Further down, a girl in a red shawl sells sprigs of holly and ivy. Her cheeks glow in the lamplight, her hands raw but steady. She hums as she works, her voice soft but sure. Every few minutes she glances toward the toy stall, where the toy maker, the same man from the morning, stands watching her with quiet affection. He doesn't speak to her, only nods when their eyes meet, as though that small gesture is enough. The market by night feels less like commerce and more like communion. The poor and the rich walk side by side, their faces washed in the same light, their hearts thawed by the same warmth. The cold still bites, but it no longer feels cruel, it feels alive, part of the night's magic. Above, the fog turns the lamplight into halos. The bells of St. Martin's toll the hour, their sound rolling across the rooftops like a benediction. A group of carolers begins to sing, their harmonies soft and steady, rising through the dark until even the stars seem to listen. The market will close soon. The candles will burn low, the laughter will fade, the gas lamps will hiss themselves to sleep. But for now, in this brief and shining hour, London glows like a dream, half-remembered, a city of light, built from hope, flame, and frost. Somewhere, between the music and the mist, you realize it. This is not merely a market, it is a cathedral without walls, where every flame is a prayer, and every passerby carries a spark of warmth through the winter night. The snow has begun to fall again, slow, deliberate flakes that drift through the lamplight like ash. Along the southern edge of the market, between the print seller and the glassblower's stall, a narrow shop stands with fogged windows and a brass sign that reads, "Daguerreotypes and portraiture, by appointment or fortune." Most walk past it, their eyes caught by the color and music outside, but those who linger notice the flicker of light from within, a strange blue glow that hums like the breath of some quiet invention. Inside, the air smells of chemicals and oil, sharp but clean. The photographer, Mr. Finch, works with sleeves rolled high, his hair silvered with age and fumes. His fingers are stained a faint grey from years of silver nitrate. He moves carefully between his instruments, brass lenses, glass plates, stands and clamps, each one gleaming in the lamplight. To him, this is no mere trade. It is alchemy, the summoning of ghosts from light. He prepares his plates, while the market hums outside. You can hear the faint echoes through the walls, carols, laughter, the tinkling of coins. A family enters, father, mother, child. Their faces are flushed from the cold, their clothes plain but neat. The little girl looks around in awe at the strange contraptions, her breath fogging the glass. "Will it hurt?" she asks. Mr. Finch smiles. "Only if you forget to smile back." He positions them carefully before the backdrop, a painted winter scene of snow and evergreens, and adjusts the lamp until the light catches their faces just so. "Hold still," he says softly. "Breathe slow. Think of something kind." The mother straightens her collar. The father rests a hand on his daughter's shoulder. For a heartbeat, they are statues caught between motion and memory. The shutter clicks, a sound like the closing of a small, perfect door. The moment is captured, a single second of warmth, sealed in silver and time. As he retreats into the dark room, Mr. Finch hums beneath his breath, counting silently while the chemicals do their work. Outside, the bells ring faintly through the glass, marking the hour. When he returns, he holds a small plate between his fingers, its surface wet and gleaming. The family leans closer, breathless. There they are, faint at first, like shadows through fog, then clearer. The mother's soft smile, the father's proud stance, the child's wide eyes reflecting the light. They stare at themselves as if seeing proof of their own existence. "It's us," the girl whispers. He wraps the image in paper and ties it with string. "Keep it somewhere warm," he advises. Light remembers kindness better that way. They thank him and disappear into the snow, their laughter fading into the dark. When the door closes, the photographer looks once more at his chemicals, at the faint outline still visible on the glass. How many such moments has he trapped this winter? Lovers, soldiers, beggars, mothers, all of them trying to steal a fragment of time from the jaws of forgetting. He knows the plates will outlast them all. Outside, the lamps flicker, and the snow continues to fall. Through the frosted window, the market glows blurred and golden, like a photograph yet to be taken. Mr. Finch stands at his workbench, his hands trembling slightly, and for a brief moment, he allows himself to believe that every image he captures is not just memory, but mercy. At the far edge of the Christmas market, where the light from the gas lamps begins to thin and the cobblestones grow uneven, the air smells less of spice and more of rain. Here, beneath a crumbling archway, a man and his cart make their rounds. The sign nailed to the side reads, "Rags, bones, bottles bought and sold." His name is Mr. Hobb, though few ever call him that. Most simply know him as the ragman. He moves slowly through the fog, his boots slick with frost, his breath a pale thread unraveling into the night. His cart creaks behind him, piled with the unwanted remains of the city, broken chairs, chipped plates, scraps of cloth, a doll's arm missing its fingers. Yet he whistles as he goes, a soft tune that carries faintly through the stillness. It is a song of work, of habit, of surviving quietly between the living and the forgotten. On nights like this, the world feels both full and empty. The market's laughter reaches him faintly, gilded with distance. He does not envy it, he only listens. He has seen the city from its gutters and its alleys, has heard the hymns of cathedrals and the curses of taverns. In every sound, he finds the same thing, the fragile noise of human hope. As he turns onto Drury Lane, he sees her, a small girl huddled beside a shuttered shop, wrapped in a coat far too big for her. She cannot be more than 8. Her hands are blue at the fingertips, her hair tangled, her eyes the pale grey of ash. Before her, on the ground, lies a broken porcelain doll, one arm gone, the dress torn. She cradles it gently as though it were a living thing. The ragman stops. Cold night for angels, he says softly. She looks up, but does not answer. Her voice has long since gone to silence, spent on days of calling for help that never came. He kneels beside her, the joints of his knees cracking like the ice beneath their feet. "That doll of yours," he murmurs. "I think I've something that'll fix her." From his cart, he rummages, through scraps and fragments, until he finds what he seeks, an arm from another doll, smaller but whole, its porcelain gleaming faintly in the lamplight. He hands it to her. "A match made by moonlight," he says with a smile. She takes it reverently, pressing it against the doll's shoulder. It doesn't fit perfectly, but in her hands it looks right. "There now," he whispers. "Every angel needs two arms, one to carry sorrow, one to hold hope." She looks at him then, truly looks, and for the first time, her lips curve into the smallest of smiles. The ragman stands, tipping his cap. "Keep her safe," he says, "and keep warm." He lifts the handles of his cart and moves on, his shadow stretching long and thin behind him. By the time the girl looks up again, he is gone, swallowed by the fog and the soft rattle of wheels on stone. She clutches the doll close, the mismatched arm glinting faintly in the lamplight like a tiny miracle. When dawn comes, the frost will cover the archway where she sat, but the imprint of her small form will remain, and beside it, a single button, shiny and white. Those who pass by will never know its story, but some say that if you listen closely, you can still hear the faint creak of a cart in the mist, and the tune of a rag and bone angel whistling softly through the cold. The narrow alley behind the market is a world apart from the noise of vendors and laughter. It is warmer here, humming with the soft hiss of fire and the quiet rhythm of creation. The glow spills from a single doorway, painting the snow outside in shades of amber and gold. Inside, the glassblower works, sleeves rolled, brow damp, hands steady. The furnace roars before him, its heart a living sun in a room of shadows. Each breath he takes becomes something more than air. He gathers the molten glass on the end of his pipe, turns it gently in the flame, and then exhales, slow, careful, measured. The bubble swells, catching the light. For a moment it glows like a captured star, fragile yet infinite. Around him hang dozens of such orbs, suspended by wire, glimmering in the dim room like frozen drops of dawn. The man's name is Anton Dvorak, not the composer, though he hums as he works, and his voice carries a rhythm that feels almost orchestral. He came to London from Bohemia 20 winters ago, with nothing but a bag of tools and a talent for coaxing beauty from fire. Since then, his ornaments have found their way into shop windows and palace trees alike. But tonight, his hands are not working for kings. Tonight, they are working for memory. In the corner of his workshop, on a shelf dusted with soot, stands a small wooden frame. The picture within has faded, a woman with soft eyes, her hair pinned back with a sprig of holly. She had died one winter past, the fever taking her within days. Anton had buried her near the river, where the snow meets the reeds. Since then, he has spoken little. Only the fire has heard his grief. He heats the pipe again, shaping another sphere. "For you," he murmurs in Czech, the words trembling in his throat. The glass expands with his breath, clear and bright, before he seals it with a twist and hangs it among the others. One by one, he fills the ceiling with light blue, gold, crimson, silver. The colors swirl and dented, shimmer, reflecting his flame back at him until the room looks like the inside of a dream. There's a knock at the door. It opens slightly, letting in a rush of cold air and a boy's curious face, one of the errand children from the market, his arms full of holly sprigs. "Sir," the boy stammers, "the stalls are closing soon. Will you be selling tonight?" Anton smiles faintly, shaking his head. "Not tonight, lad. Tonight, I only make gifts." He reaches up and plucks a small ornament from its wire, a sphere of deep blue, swirled with gold. "Take this one," he says. "For your mother." The boy's eyes widen. "I can't pay. You already have." Anton interrupts. "You brought the holly." He presses the ornament into the boy's mittened hand. the warmth of it still clinging to his skin. When the door closes, Anton stands alone again. The fire crackles softly, its glow reflecting in every orb. The workshop feels full now, full of warmth, of color, of something that feels almost like her presence. Outside, the snow continues to fall. From the alley, the windows blaze with a strange, holy light, as though angels have taken up residence inside. Those who pass glance at it and whisper that the glassblower works with more than breath. They say he shapes memory itself, taking grief, love, and longing, and turning them into light. And perhaps they're right, for when dawn comes and the fire dims, a faint warmth still lingers in the air, the ghost of the glassblower's breath, waiting to be born again in flame. The frost has settled deep in the cracks of the cobblestones, turning every step into a crunch of ice and ash. The air smells of iron and smoke, laced with something heavier, the scent of roasting meat drifting from the market's edge, where the butcher's stall blazes bright against the night. The flames from his open pit lick the dark, casting his shadow long across the square. Children gather near the warmth, their hands outstretched toward the heat that shimmers like liquid gold. The butcher, a man named Hollis, is broad and red-cheeked, his apron already stained before sunrise. He sings as he works a low, rhythmic tune that wavers between hymn and laughter. The blade in his hand flashes like a mirror, the air filling with the hiss of fat meeting flame. To some, he is a figure of excess, a man who measures life by what can be carved and salted. But those who know him better know this. Every winter, on the coldest night before Christmas, Hollis gives half his stock away. The day begins as it always does, early, noisy, alive. His apprentices drag in sides of beef, baskets of game, a crate of sausages strung together like pearls. He barks orders with the good humor of a captain on a ship. "Mind the cuts, lad, or I'll have your fingers in the stew." The boys laugh, and the knives keep moving. By noon, the stall glows like a furnace, smoke coiling upward until it disappears into the fog. Customers come in waves. The wealthy choose their cuts with precision, their gloves perfumed and clean. Hollis weighs their purchases, wraps them in brown paper, and smiles the same smile he's used for 20 years, polite, wide, practiced. But when the light begins to dim and the carols drift closer, something in him softens. He sets aside the finest pieces, the roasts, the joints, the sausages that glisten with fat, and waits. The first to come are the widows, clutching shawls tight around their shoulders. Then the old men with canes, the mothers, with children in tow, the boys who work at the docks. They come quietly, as they always do, embarrassed by need but unable to hide it. Hollis says nothing. He only nods, his great hands wrapping the parcels without a word. "For Christmas," he says each time, sliding the bundle across the counter. No coin tonight. Some try to pay a single farthing, a promise for later, but he waves them off. A debt for Christmas, he laughs, is no debt at all. His apprentices, wide-eyed, follow his lead, handing out scraps and bones, bits of bread from the baker next door. Soon the entire stall is a blur of gratitude and steam, of frost melting from faces warmed by fire and mercy. When the crowd thins, Hollis wipes his hands on his apron and looks at what remains, a few bones, a pot of stew simmering at the edge of the coals. He ladles some into a tin bowl and carries it to the corner where a blind beggar sits, the faint sound of a bell at his feet. "You'll eat, too," Hollis murmurs, setting it down. "No one starves near my fire." As midnight nears, the market begins to empty. Snow drifts lazily across the square, softening the sharp edges of the world. Hollis leans against the counter, exhausted, his face glowing from the heat. The laughter of the people he's fed lingers like music in the air. Above him, the bells of St. Martin's toll once more, their sound deep and warm. He closes his eyes for a moment, feeling the pulse of the city move around him, hunger, gratitude, life. When he opens them again, the coals burn low, the smoke curling gently into the cold. He hums the same tune he began the day with, though now it sounds like something else entirely, not a song of labor, but of grace. And when the last flame dies, it leaves behind only warmth, not in the air, but in the hearts of those who will wake tomorrow with a meal on their tables, never knowing the butcher who fed them in the dark. By the time the moon climbs high over London, the market has quieted into a strange, luminous stillness. The stalls stand like rows of sleeping giants, their awnings heavy with frost. Even the laughter has frozen mid-air, lingering faintly in the hush between the gas lamps. The snow that began as a dusting has thickened into a curtain, soft, relentless, blurring the world to white. Every footprint that had scurried through the day has vanished, erased by the patience of the storm. The street feels abandoned but not dead. The silence here breathes. Each lamp hums with a low hiss, its flame flickering inside the glass like a trapped star. Beneath their light, the frost gleams in tiny prisms, blue and gold and white, as if the cobblestones themselves were dusted in powdered glass. The city's usual pulse, the clatter of carriages, the murmur of bargains, the songs of the poor has been swallowed whole by snow. Yet not everyone has gone home. At the far end of the street, a lamplighter lingers, his ladder half buried in slush. He works slowly, more from ritual than duty, touching each lamp with his taper and nodding to the flame as it steadies. He hums to himself, the same tune he lit the morning with, though now it sounds like a lullaby. His boots squeak with every step. His breath drifts upward like smoke. When the final lamp burns bright, he lowers his ladder and tips his hat to the empty street, as if to say, "Sleep well, London." A stray dog pads behind him, its fur silvered with snow. It pauses to sniff at a half-eaten bun left by the baker's stall, then curls beside a barrel still warm from the butcher's fire. The world shrinks to its quiet breathing and the whisper of falling snow. Somewhere deeper in the alley, a woman hums softly to her child, her voice muffled by the wind. The tune rises, trembles, and fades a lullaby for the city itself. The frost begins to build in layers, creeping up the wooden poles and across the market signs, swallowing the painted letters one by one. A wreath of holly stiffens under its weight, the red berries trapped beneath a shell of ice. A paper crown, blown from a rubbish bin, skitters across the street until it catches on a lantern post, glittering faintly before the snow buries it whole. For a moment, it is as though the world has stopped breathing. Even time seems to hesitate, caught between heartbeats, and then faintly the bells begin to toll from St. Martin's once more. The sound moves through the storm like a memory, soft and distant, yet alive. The dog lifts its head. The lamplighter pauses. The woman's song ceases mid-note. The bells continue, patient and solemn, until the last echo fades into the hush. When dawn comes, the city will wake to a miracle of silence. The market will lie beneath a white shroud, every roof and awning hidden under the same delicate weight. To those who rise early, it will look like peace. But those who listen closely will know better. They'll hear the faint heartbeat of the night still pulsing beneath the ice, the memory of laughter sealed inside the snow, waiting for the first footstep to break the spell. And somewhere, deep within that silence, the frozen street will remember the warmth that built it, the fires, the songs, the hands that shaped its joy, and hold them close until the world begins to move again. Before the city fully wakes, before the market's first lantern flickers to life, a single figure moves through the snow-laden streets, the postman. His boots crunch over the frost, each step steady and deliberate. The world around him is still blue with dawn, the air sharp enough to sting the lungs. Slung across his shoulder is a canvas bag swollen with letters, its leather strap creaking with age. Inside are the sounds of distant hearts, whispers written in ink, folded carefully and sealed with hope. He is a small man, bent slightly forward, not from weakness but from carrying 1,000 secrets each winter. His name is Wilkes, and though few know it, he knows theirs, not their voices, not their faces, but their handwriting, their joys, their fears. He knows who writes in trembling script who dots their I's with care, who seals their envelopes with wax shaped like stars. He knows which homes wait eagerly for his knock and which tremble at the sight of him. The cold doesn't bother him anymore. He's long learned that warmth can be found in other ways. A smile from a baker, the faint curl of smoke from a widow's chimney, a child's hand waving through frosted glass. Each is a small flickering fire in the endless dark. He begins his route near the docks, where sailors' wives keep watch for letters that might never come. One woman opens her door before he can even knock. Her face, pale with expectation, falls as he shakes his head. "Not today, ma'am." She nods, trying to smile, though her hand lingers on the door as he turns away. Further up the street, he leaves a parcel wrapped in brown paper at a church orphanage toys sent from a benefactor whose name he's never learned to pronounce. By the time the sun climbs over the rooftops, his bag is lighter. The city is stirring now, bakers opening shutters, the milkman calling through the fog, children chasing each other's footprints in the snow. He stops for tea at the corner shop, warming his hands over the kettle as the shopkeeper fills his cup. "Busy morning?" she asks. "Christmas always is," he says. The letters double when the days grow short. When he steps back outside, the bells begin to chime from St. Martin's, their sound mingling with the rustle of paper in his bag. His next stop is the square, where the market is beginning to bloom again. He sorts through his satchel, setting aside a few special envelopes marked in gold and green greetings for the shopkeepers, cards painted with angels and holly. He delivers each one with a nod. To the toy maker, a letter from his brother in Prague. To the candle seller, a note from her son serving with the Navy. To the lamplighter, a small envelope smelling faintly of violets, a thank you, unsigned. Each exchange leaves the postman smiling. He has carried sorrow before the telegrams that end joy. The letters sealed in black, but today his load is lighter. The words he carries are warm. "We miss you. Come home soon. The fire is waiting." By afternoon, the last letter in his bag bears no address, only a child's scrawl. "For Father Christmas." He hesitates, then places it beneath the great spruce in the center of the market, tucked gently under its lowest branch. The snow has begun to fall again, burying the footprints he leaves behind. When he finally turns toward home, his bag is empty, but his heart feels full. The letters are gone, but their voices linger, 1,000 small flames flickering across the frozen city. Behind him, the street glows softly in the evening light, and above, the bells ring again. Somewhere in their music, if one listens closely, you can almost hear the rustle of envelopes and the heartbeat of a man who has spent his life delivering warmth through the cold. By the time the afternoon melts into the long, violet stretch of evening, the fog has returned thicker than before, heavy with the scent of coal smoke and river mist. It creeps between the narrow streets like something alive, swallowing the gaslights one by one, until only their halos remain, soft and trembling in the haze. From within that shroud of grey, a sound begins to rise, the faint murmur of voices, careful at first, then strong. They come from the East End, wrapped in scarves and courage, the carolers. There are 8 of them tonight. 4 men, 3 women, and a boy no older than 12. They walk arm in arm, lanterns swinging from their hands, their breath visible in the cold. Their leader, a stout man named Mr. Alden, carries a worn hymnal bound in green cloth. His voice is deep, the kind that finds warmth even in the chill. "Right, now," he says softly. From the top, "The fog won't stop us," and it doesn't. The first notes of "God Rest Ye Merry" gentlemen rise through the mist, threading between the market stalls and empty streets. The sound is clear, rich as if the fog itself carries it, bending and amplifying it through the air. The laughter of the nearby crowd quiets for a moment. Shopkeepers pause in their counting, and even the horses lift their heads. The carolers move slowly, the lanterns bobbing like willow, the wisps in the fog. Their boots crunch over the frost, leaving faint trails that vanish seconds after they pass. They stop at each corner, at each window lit with candlelight, singing to anyone who will listen, or to no one at all. Their harmonies climb and fall, carrying both joy and something older, something almost sorrowful. A widow leaning out her window presses a hand to her heart. A beggar by the lamp-post closes his eyes, mouthing the words he still remembers from childhood. A watchman at the corner wipes a tear quickly away, pretending it's the wind. When they reach the market square, the fog has thickened so much that they can hardly see one another's faces. The world feels reduced to sound and breath. Mr. Alden raises his hand, and the group begins again, this time, Silent Night. The notes tremble softly in the air, fragile as glass. For a moment, even the city's engines seem to hush. The song moves like light through water, slow and pure, touching every corner of the square. As the final chord fades, the boy lets out a small sigh. "It sounds different in the fog," he whispers. Mr. Alden smiles. "Everything sounds truer when the world can't see your face." They stand quietly for a moment, the fog swirling around them like a living veil. Then, from somewhere unseen, a single clap breaks the silence, then another, then a wave of applause from the hidden crowd. The carolers laugh softly, bowing toward the sound. When the bells of St. Martin's strike the hour, the group turns to leave. Their lanterns swing again, bright against the grey. The fog swallows them slowly, their voices fading into the distance. Sleep in heavenly peace. By the time the last note disappears, the market has returned to its hush. But the air feels different now, warmer somehow, more alive. The fog still lingers, but within it there is light, invisible but certain, and those who heard the carolers that night will remember it, how the songs rose through the mist like prayers, soft and steady, reminding a weary city that even when all sight is lost, sound and faith can still find its way home. The morning after the fog, the city wakes to a rare thing, sunlight. It pours through the thin clouds like honey, catching on the frost that has settled over every roof and window. The market glitters anew, its stalls rimmed in silver. Children are the first to fill the square, drawn by a rumor that spreads faster than the sound of bells. The toy parade is coming. It happens only once a year, a procession of toy makers and apprentices, pulling carts filled with their handiwork through the heart of London before Christmas Eve. It is not an official holiday, nor one decreed by the Queen. It began years ago, when a handful of craftsmen, unable to sell their remaining wares, decided to give them away instead. Now, it is a tradition as cherished as the lighting of the great market tree. By the time the first wagon rattles down the cobblestones, the crowd is 3 rows deep. Lanterns hang from balconies. Ribbons flutter from iron railings. The air is thick with the smell of pine and baking bread. Children perch on crates and shoulders, their cheeks flushed, their breath curling into clouds as they strain for a glimpse. Leading the procession is old Mr. Latham, the clockwork maker. His cart is stacked with wind-up horses, brass birds, and small soldiers that march in rows when wound. Behind him comes a woman in a plum-colored shawl with boxes of dolls whose porcelain faces glimmer like moonlight. A young apprentice follows, balancing a tray of painted tops and wooden marbles that catch the light like jewels. The music begins, a small brass band of cobblers and shop boys, their trumpets dented but their joy unbroken. The melody rings bright through the crisp air, scattering flocks of pigeons into the sky. The rhythm sets the parade in motion, each cart rolling forward with the creak of wheels and laughter. As they pass, toys are tossed gently into the crowd, spinning tops, whistles, small carved animals. The children shout with delight, clutching the gifts to their chests. A girl with braids catches a doll no bigger than her hand. A boy lifts a tin soldier triumphantly above his head. Even the grown-ups smile, their faces softening in the glow of the moment. For a few heartbeats, all distinctions, rich, poor, weary, noble, blur into the same wide-eyed wonder. At the tail of the parade walks a tall man in a black coat, the toy maker from the morning market. He carries no cart, only a small box tucked under his arm. When he reaches the center of the square, He stops before the great spruce tree, its branches heavy with candles and glass ornaments. From the box, he removes a single toy, a wooden train, polished smooth and painted scarlet. He winds it once, places it on the snow, and lets it go. The crowd falls silent as the toy clatters along the ground, its brass wheels gleaming in the sunlight. It circles the base of the tree before coming to rest beside a child's shoe. The toy maker bows his head, as though the act itself were prayer. Then, as if on cue, the bells of St. Martin's begin to ring. Their chime rolls through the square, deep and golden, blending with the laughter and applause. The parade continues, carts and carols and cheers winding down the street like a ribbon of color in the pale winter air. When it's over, the crowd lingers, unwilling to let the day end. Toys lie scattered across the snow, half buried, half claimed, tiny relics of joy that will be carried home to attic rooms and kitchen tables. And as the last wagon disappears into the sunlit fog, London itself seems to exhale as if, for one shining hour, the city remembered how to play. The sun slips low behind the rooftops, and the market's warmth deepens into gold. The laughter of the toy parade lingers in the air, soft as memory, while the city's well-dressed men emerge from their carriages like dark silhouettes against the snow. Their boots gleam, their canes shine, their collars rise high against the chill. These are London's gentlemen bankers, barristers, merchants drawn not by need, but by the season's ritual of generosity. Charity, for them, is not obligation but ceremony. They move through the market in quiet groups, their voices hushed but confident. Their gloves are immaculate, their eyes keenly observant. The vendors straighten as they pass, hats in hand, smiles practiced but grateful. Coins glint like stars as they drop into tin cups and paper hats, a slow, steady rain of silver mercy. "Merry Christmas," the men say, as though the phrase itself were a gift. "God bless you, my good fellow." At the soup stall near the square, a fenced gentleman pauses. His coat is velvet, his buttons mother of pearl. He watches a small boy no older than 10 ladling broth into chipped bowls for the waiting poor. The child's scarf is torn, his hands raw from cold, yet his movements are sure, efficient. The man hesitates, then presses a coin into the boy's palm. "For your trouble," he says. The boy looks up, startled. "For theirs, sir," he corrects gently, and hands the coin to the woman running the stall. The gentleman nods, suddenly unsure what to say, and walks on. Farther along, 2 merchants stop before the beggar's corner, the place where the old man with the bell once knelt. Tonight, only his bell remains, half buried in snow. One of the men bends, picks it up, and turns it in his hand. "He's gone, then," he murmurs. His companion shrugs. "There are always more." But the first man doesn't put the bell down. Instead, he slips it into his coat pocket and stands silently for a moment, listening to the faint chime it makes against the lining. Across the square, the butcher Hollis leans against his counter, watching the carriages roll by. One of the gentlemen, a tall man with a cane of polished ebony, approaches his stall. "I heard," the man says, "you gave away half your wares last night." Hollis nods. "Aye, folk were hungry." The gentleman studies him, then sets his cane against the counter and opens his purse. "Then you'll not pay for the next half," he says, placing a small pouch of coins beside the cleaver. Hollis stares, stunned. "I've no charity to repay that, sir." The man smiles faintly. "Then pay it forward. That's charity enough." By nightfall, the market gleams beneath the gaslight, coins in cups, bread in hands, hope in pockets. The gentlemen begin to leave, their carriages waiting at the edge of the square. They will dine tonight by fires of marble and mahogany, speaking of philanthropy between sips of wine. Some will remember the faces they've helped, most will not. But as the last carriage door closes, one man lingers. He stands by the market's gate, watching the snow fall onto the crowd. For the first time, he removes his gloves, letting the cold bite his skin. Around him, the city hums, the poor laughing, the bells ringing, the scent of oranges sweet on the air. He drops a final coin into a beggar's cup and whispers, "Merry Christmas." The beggar looks up, smiles, and replies, "It is, sir, for all of us." The man turns toward the darkening street, his breath a cloud in the air. Behind him, the sound of carols swells again, and for the briefest moment, London feels whole, stitched together by the smallest of kindnesses, glinting like gold in the snow. Her stall sits at the far corner of the market, just where the gaslight fades into the fog. The sign above it, hand-painted in fading gilt, reads lace and ribbons, finest repairs, fair price. Each morning before the sun rises, she arrives with her cart, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, red as embers in the grey dawn. It is the only colour she owns, the last remnant of a wedding trousseau that never saw a church. Her name is Clara. No one knows her age, though her face carries both youth and weariness in equal measure. Her fingers are deft, her eyes sharp. With a needle so fine it could sew dreams, she mends torn gloves and frayed cuffs, weaves new life into silk that others would discard. The shawl slips from her shoulders as she works, catching the lamplight, a small flame flickering against the winter gloom. All day, the market moves around her. Vendors shout, bells chime, laughter spills like smoke. But Clara's world is quieter, the rhythm of her needle and Clara face, thread steady as a heartbeat. She hums while she works, not a song anyone recognizes, but something soft and circular, like a lullaby for forgotten things. Her customers come and go quickly, a housemaid needing lace for her mistress, a soldier's wife clutching a torn uniform, a young girl hoping to turn an old ribbon into something beautiful again. Clara never overcharges. She takes what she's given, smiles, and says, "It's enough." At noon, she eats her supper, a crust of bread, a slice of cheese, and an apple saved from the previous day. Across the square, she watches the world glitter and move. The toy parade passes, and children wave bright flags in the cold. The carolers sing beneath the church steps, their voices carrying through the fog. Clara listens but does not join. She has her music already, the whisper of thread through fabric, the sound of mending, of holding together what might otherwise come undone. But every evening, just as the market begins to close, a figure appears. The toy maker, the same man who watches her from his stall across the square. His name is Mr. Ellis, though they've never spoken it aloud. He passes her stall at the same hour each night, his cap in hand, his smile small but certain. Sometimes he pauses to buy a length of ribbon, always the same color, always red. "For decoration," he says, though she suspects otherwise. She ties each one carefully, her fingers brushing his only by accident. Neither speaks much. The silence between them is soft, kind, and full of understanding. Tonight, as the snow begins to fall again, Clara feels the first bite of cold through her boots. She finishes her last repair, wraps her thread, and begins to pack her things. But when she lifts her eyes, he is there again, the toy maker, holding something in his gloved hand. A small glass ornament, clear as ice, with a single red ribbon threaded through its top. "For you," he says simply, his voice almost lost beneath the wind. She takes it carefully, her breath fogging the glass. "It's beautiful," she murmurs. "It's yours," he replies, "to hang wherever warmth is needed." For a long moment, they stand in the falling snow, two solitary souls lit by a single lamp. Then he tips his cap and walks away, vanishing into the fog. Clara tucks the ornament into her shawl and watches him go. When she returns home, she hangs it above her small hearth. The flame from her candle catches its curve, scattering light across the walls, red, gold, and silver all at once. It is the first thing she's owned in years that glows. Outside, the market sleeps beneath a veil of frost, but in the tiny room above the alley, the woman in the red shawl works by candlelight, stitching beauty back into a world that so often forgets it. And now, above her fire, a spark of kindness shimmers with every breath she takes. It begins as a tremor, faint as breath, a single vibration that moves through the cold air like a pulse. Then, as if gathering courage, the sound swells into being. The bell of St. Martin's tolls once more, and the city listens. For years it has marked the hours of work and worship. But on winter nights like this, when the fog lies heavy and the stars refuse to appear, it becomes something more. The people of London have learned to measure their lives by it. Lovers part on its first toll, prayers end on its fifth, the dying wait for its last. Its voice carries across rooftops and alleyways, over the river and into the lungs of the poor. Even the wind seems to pause when it speaks. Tonight, the bell's tone is softer, its echo laced with frost. The air is clear enough that the sound rings true, pure, resonant, almost human. Below, the streets are quiet. The market stalls have shuttered. The lamps flicker like tired eyes. Only a few wanderers remain, a watchman stamping, his boots, a chimney sweep heading home, a mother holding her child close as snow settles in her hair. Each one turns slightly toward the church without realizing it, as though the bell were calling them by name. Inside St. Martin's, the air smells of stone and candle wax. The pews are empty, save for a few souls seeking warmth or prayer. The bell rope sways in the tower, guided by the hand of an old sexton who moves with deliberate grace. He has tended the bell for 40 years, though his back now bends like the bow of a ship under too much wind. His hands are cracked and blackened by oil, yet when they grasp the rope, the movement is as gentle as a father lifting a child. He pulls once more, and the sound ripples through the timbers, shuddering up into the night. The city's pulse quickens. In the market square, the woman in the red shawl looks up from her stitching. The toymaker pauses mid-carve, knife suspended above the wood. The lamplighter stops at the corner of the race bridge, one hand resting on his ladder. Even the stray dog by the butcher's stall tilts its head. The bell seems to bind them all for an instant, the poor, the weary, the unseen, in a single note of belonging. It tolls again, lower this time, resonant enough to stir the snow from the rooftops. The flakes fall slower now, swirling in the golden air like ash and starlight. As the final peal fades, the sexton stands quietly beneath the rope. He removes his cap and whispers a prayer not for kings or clergy, but for the ordinary souls whose lives the bell touches each day. Keep them warm, he says. Keep them kind. Then he turns to snuff the candles one by one, until only the great flame of the sanctuary lamp remains. Outside, London breathes again. Doors open, fires rekindle, footsteps resume. Yet the echo lingers, wrapping itself around chimney smoke and lamplight. For hours afterward, the city hums with its rhythm, a hymn carried on the wind. And those who heard it will remember not just the sound, but the stillness it left behind, the brief, holy quiet in which even the coldest hearts felt seen. For the bell of St. Martin's is not merely metal and motion, it is the voice of the city itself, weary, steadfast, and full of grace. The morning dawns pale and cold, the frost thick as lace upon the windows. The air smells faintly of ink and steam, the scent of a world being remade, page by page. Down Fleet Street, amid the tangle of chimneys and narrow lanes, stands a small print shop. Its sign reads "See Fair Weather and Sons," fine publications and pamphlets. But everyone simply calls it the Miracle Shop. Inside, the floorboards hum beneath the weight of machinery. The great iron press crouches at the center like a beast of burden, its gears slick with oil, its levers glinting with soot. Every turn of the crank brings another heartbeat of the city to life. Sermons, news sheets, broadsides, and stories. This morning, however, it breathes something different. A little book called A Christmas Carol by a certain Mr. Dickens. The printer himself, Mr. Fairweather, stands hunched beside the machine, his spectacles fogged with effort. His hair and cuffs are dusted with flowery grey ink. His apprentices, 2 boys, barely out of childhood, feed the pages one by one into the press, their movements quick and careful. Outside, the bells of St. Martin's mark the hour, but no one here notices. The work is sacred, careful with the impressions, the printer mutters, his voice gravel and warmth in equal measure. Every page a sermon, every line a soul. When the first copies emerge, warm and smelling faintly of tin and ink, he holds one up to the light streaming through the frosted window. The pages gleam faintly, the gold edges catching fire in the morning sun. He reads aloud the opening line, and the words seem to hang in the air like a benediction. Marley was dead, to begin with. He smiles. Perfect. By noon, the first bundle is wrapped in brown paper and loaded onto a cart bound for the market square. The apprentices wipe their hands on rags, staring proudly at their ink-stained fingers, proof that they have helped birth something larger than themselves. "Will people buy?" one of them asks. Mr. Fairweather chuckles. "If they've ever known hunger or hope, they will." The cart rattles through the streets, leaving small puffs of steam and excitement in its wake. By the time it reaches the market, a crowd has already gathered, drawn by rumor more than advertisement. The books are unwrapped, their red covers glowing in the winter light. A shopgirl picks one up first, her gloves leaving faint prints on the paper. She opens it, begins to read aloud softly, reverently. Within moments, others gather around her, listening. Laughter rises, then sighs, then silence, the kind that only good stories can make. By evening, every copy has vanished. The printer's boys return with pockets full of coins and eyes full of wonder. When Mr. Fairweather hears the news, he sits down heavily beside the press and laughs until he nearly weeps. "The people are reading again," he murmurs. "They've remembered their hearts." Outside, the snow falls, thicker now, blanketing the streets, the rooftops, even the sign above his door. The city glows beneath it, quieter, kinder, changed, and somewhere, in hundreds of small rooms lit by candles and hope, voices rise in unison as families read aloud the same tale of redemption. It is not the kind of miracle that turns water to wine or raises the dead. It is quieter, the miracle of words, ink, and faith. A story born in a press of iron and sweat that somehow manages to warm a city made of smoke and sorrow. And when the final candle is blown out, its light lives on in the turning of a page, in the laughter of a child, in the simple belief that even the coldest night can end in song. Down in Whitechapel, where the city forgets to shine, the snow lies uneven, blackened by soot, melted in patches where the factory chimneys breathe their constant smoke. Yet on this evening, beneath the cracked arch of St. Jude's Church, something soft begins to stir. A small group of children gathers there, their breath clouding the air, their voices whispering with nervous energy. They wear mismatched coats, too short at the sleeves, and shoes patched with paper and string. But their eyes, bright and alive, belong to something purer than their hunger. They are the choir, or at least, that's what their teacher calls them. Miss Abernathy, the parish organist, is a woman of thin wrists and endless patience. She carries herself like someone made of glass, fragile, yet unbreakable. Her gloves have holes in them, her hat has lost its trim, but her smile is warm enough to fill the entire nave. "Now then," she says, clapping softly, voices up, shoulders straight. "We sing for the market tonight, and you'll not have St. Jude embarrassed, will you?" The children laugh, a dozen thin, chiming notes that could break the heart of any passerby. They gather closer, their breath mingling in small white puffs. Some are orphans, some belong to labourers too poor to come home before midnight. All of them are there because Miss Abernathy found them once sleeping in doorways, begging in streets, and offered them something no coin could buy: a song. When they begin to sing, the sound feels almost impossible. It rises through the hollow bones of the church, bouncing from stone to stained glass, then out into the street. It carries warmth with it, a tenderness that threads through the cold air like silk. Passers-by stop, one by one. A policeman lowers his lantern. A fruit seller wipes her eyes with her sleeve. Even the horses, restless and shivering, quiet their hooves. The children do not sing grandly. Their voices tremble, some off-key, some barely above a whisper, but together they form something whole, the sound of innocence refusing to be extinguished. It came upon the midnight clear. Their words linger on the air, unguarded and true. When the final note fades, there is a silence deeper than applause. Then, slowly, coins begin to fall into Miss Abernathy's basket, silver and copper, some wrapped in scraps of cloth. A woman from the crowd steps forward, placing a loaf of bread on the ground before the children. "For your supper," she says. Another man removes his scarf and drapes it over the smallest girl's shoulders. The market has no cathedral, but for this moment, the street itself becomes one. Later that night, Miss Abernathy leads the children back to the church basement. They sit in a circle around a single candle, eating the bread and humming the last verse. She listens quietly, her heart full and aching. "You've done well," she tells them softly. "Do you know why we sing?" A boy, with freckles, looks up. "So people don't forget we're here?" She smiles. "Yes, and so you don't forget what you are." The candlelight trembles, and for a moment, the room glows as if heaven itself leaned close to listen. Outside, the wind howls through the narrow streets, rattling the shutters, but inside, the sound of children's voices endures, thin, brave, eternal. In a city that swallows its poor, the choir of Whitechapel sings not for charity, but for remembrance, each note a defiance, each harmony a promise that even in the darkest quarter, light still knows their names. It is a night painted in gold and grey, the kind of night that London saves for Christmas Eve. The market glows beneath its shroud of fog, the lamps burning like constellations suspended above the frost. Snow drifts softly over the rooftops, silencing the city's endless noise. Beneath one of those lamps, tucked between the toy stall and the bookseller's booth, stand two young lovers, not hand in hand, but close enough that their breath mingles in the cold. Her name is Margaret, his, Thomas. She works as a seamstress in a shop off Holborn, sewing sleeves and hems for ladies she will never meet. He is a clerk at a counting house by the docks, his days spent bending over ledgers and ink-stained pages. They met by accident last December, both seeking shelter from the rain under the same archway. Since then, they have met here every Christmas Eve, always by this same stall, always at the same hour, as if the market itself keeps time for them. The vendor knows them by now, a kindly woman named Mrs. Price, who sells sugared almonds and candied fruits. Each year, she pretends to be surprised when they appear. "Ah, back again, are we?" she says, smiling as she wipes her hands on her apron. "You've grown thinner, both of you. That's what love does to a body, takes your appetite and gives it back as longing." They laugh, embarrassed, but she slips an extra handful of almonds into their paper cone all the same. They wander together through the square, speaking quietly. Around them, the market thrums with its last surge of life. The carolers sing beneath the arches. The butchers and bakers shout their final bargains before the night grows late. The smell of roasting chestnuts drifts through the air, mingling with wax and pine. Yet for Margaret and Thomas, the world seems to narrow until it is only this, the sound of her laughter, the warmth of his shoulder brushing hers, the quiet promise that tomorrow will come. He stops before a stall selling trinkets, pocket watches, brooches, silver pins that catch the lamplight like stars. He lingers over a small brass locket shaped like a heart. "How much?" he asks. The seller names a price that makes his heart sink. He hesitates, counting the coins in his pocket. It isn't enough. But the stall owner, noticing his expression, leans forward. "For love?" she asks. He nods. She smiles faintly. "Then take it, lad. Love's payment enough for tonight." He presses the locket into Margaret's palm. "It isn't much," he says. She opens it and gasps softly. Inside, he has tucked a tiny scrap of paper, the smallest piece torn from a page of his ledger. In ink, careful but shaky, he has written 3 words, "Wait for me." Her eyes glisten, though she smiles through it. Always. The bells of St. Martin's begin to toll, their chimes rolling across the rooftops. The market stalls close one by one. their lights dimming until only the snow remains, silver in the lamplight. They stand for a while longer, watching their breath rise into the air like smoke. Neither wants to break the moment. When at last they part, it is without a kiss, only a touch of hands, a promise carried in warmth. She walks toward the narrow streets of Holborn, the locket glinting against her coat. He watches until she disappears, then turns toward the docks, his footsteps soft in the falling snow. Above them, the bells keep ringing 12 notes for the 12 months that will pass before they meet again. The market empties, the lights fade, but in that small space of frost and music, love has left its trace, not loud, not grand, but as steady as the glow of a candle that refuses to die. By the time the market sleeps, when the laughter has thinned into silence and the snow has buried the footprints of the day, a new figure takes to the streets one few see, and fewer still remember. His name is Caleb, though most would know him only by his trade. He is a rag picker, one of London's quiet scavengers, gathering what the daylight leaves behind. He moves through the alleys like a shadow wrapped in wool, a sack slung over one shoulder and a small lantern swinging in his hand. Its glass is cracked, its flame a wavering pinprick in the dark, but it's enough to see by, enough to keep the night from swallowing him whole. Every time the wind threatens to snuff it out, he shields it with his hands, whispering under his breath as if the light were a living friend. The city feels different after midnight. The stalls that had sung with color and warmth now stand like ghosts of their daytime selves, their canopies heavy with frost. The oranges are gone, the ribbons packed, away, but faint scents still linger: spice, pine, smoke, and something almost like laughter. Caleb breathes it in. To him, this is when London tells its secrets. He begins his work in the square, picking through the remains of the market. A torn glove, a bit of ribbon trampled into the slush, a broken tin soldier missing its head. He collects them all. Not for profit, there is little of that to be found, but because he cannot bear to leave them to the dark. Everything deserves another use, he murmurs, tucking the pieces into his bag. Down by the church steps, he finds a small candle half burned, its wax hardened into a spiral. He lights it from his lantern and sets it gently beside the bell tower's door. For the beggar, he says softly, remembering the man who once knelt there ringing his bell. The flame flickers, steadying itself against the cold. As he makes his way toward the river, the snow begins again, slow, deliberate, the kind that hushes the whole world. His boots leave shallow prints, his lantern sways, and with each swing, the light touches pieces of the city that would otherwise remain unseen. A sleeping dog curled under a wagon, a window cracked just enough to show the glow of a dying hearth, a single holly wreath left hanging crooked on a shop door. When he reaches the edge of the Thames, he stops. The water glints faintly in the moonlight, dark and restless. He opens his sack and begins to sort through its contents. The broken toy soldier he places on the stone ledge, the torn ribbon he ties to a railing, the bits of candle wax he presses together until they form one stub, which he lights from his lantern and sets adrift on the current. The tiny flame wobbles, then steadies, floating downstream like a lost star. Caleb watches it go until it vanishes into the mist. For those who can't see the light, he whispers, when dawn comes, the market will open again, the city will bustle, and no one will remember the man who walked through their dreams carrying fire in a cracked glass lamp. But in the half-light between night and morning, his work remains scraps turned to beauty, refuse made into remembrance, and if, by some chance, you walk the riverbank before the sun climbs high, you might find what he left behind: a ribbon fluttering in the frost, a candle stub still smoking, and the faintest scent of warmth, proof that even in a city of cold stones, one lantern still burns for those the world forgets. The hour is near midnight, and London lies hushed beneath its heaviest snowfall of the year. The market that had thrummed with life only hours before now rests beneath a soft white shroud. Each stall is a ghost of itself, frames buried under drifts, ropes sagging with ice, the faint outline of forgotten baskets visible beneath the snow's quiet weight. Even the lamps burn lower, their flames dulled by the cold. What was once noise and color has become stillness and silver. The wind has gone, leaving the air thick and soundless. Snowflakes fall in slow spirals, fat and lazy, as if the sky has grown too tired to let them hurry. They gather on rooftops and railings, on the curls of iron lampposts, on the faces of the statues that keep watch over the square. It is a kind of peace the city seldom knows, not the peace of plenty, but of pause. The world holds its breath. Somewhere in that silence, a single sound rings out the creak of a door. A figure steps into the square, his lantern glowing dimly behind its frost-covered glass. It is the lamplighter again, making his final round. His boots crunch through the snow, leaving a clean trail across the untouched street. He stops beneath each lamp, checking the flame, tapping the post to test its steadiness. When he reaches the center of the market, he looks up at the great spruce tree standing sentinel over the square. Its candles have burned low, their wax frozen mid-drip. He exhales, his breath clouding the air, then strikes one last match and relights the nearest candle. The small flame sputters, catches, and climbs. Light spills across the snow, glinting on shards of ice, on ribbons caught in the frost, on coins dropped and half buried. The lamplighter smiles faintly. "That's better," he murmurs, and tips his cap to the empty air, as though the ghosts of the day are still there to see it. Up on the rooftops, the snow muffles every sound, even the bells of St. Martin's ring softly, their echoes, folding into the clouds. A fox darts through the alleyway, leaving paw prints that disappear as soon as they're made. The entire city seems suspended between heartbeat and dream. For a brief moment, it feels as though time itself has stepped aside to watch the snow fall. The market, the churches, the factories, even the endless river, all of it held in perfect, breathless stillness. And then, somewhere deep within that silence, a voice begins to sing. It is faint at first, a lullaby, almost. Then another joins it, and another. The children of Whitechapel, their small voices rising into the night. They sing not from any stage or chapel, but from their beds, their memories, their hearts. The melody drifts through the windows of 100 homes, carried on warmth, on candlelight, on love. The lamplighter listens. He closes his eyes, the sound wrapping around him like a prayer. For the first time all night, he feels no cold. When the song fades, he lowers his lantern and turns for home. Above him, the snow continues to fall endless, forgiving, eternal. It buries the sins and sorrows of the day, the footprints of both rich and poor, the laughter and the silence alike. The city sleeps beneath its silver veil, dreaming of warmth, of light, of the morning to come. And when dawn finally breaks, when the bells toll, and the first fire is lit, and the market stirs once more, the snow will melt into memory. But for one night, at least, London was pure, and in that purity, every soul from queen to beggar belonged to the same white peace. The bells of St. Martin's ring slow and low, their notes heavy with the kind of peace that follows exhaustion. Morning comes grey and soft, the sun veiled behind a sky of unbroken cloud. The snow, which fell all night, now lies thick across London, an ocean of white swallowing rooftops, chimneys, and streets. The market square is unrecognizable. The once bustling aisles of traders and laughter are buried beneath drifts so deep that only the tips of the gas lamps and the tallest branches of the Christmas spruce still show. The city wakes slowly. Doors creak open. Cautious heads peer out. Even the air feels muffled, as if the snow has stolen sound itself. A few brave souls venture outside, milkmen balancing buckets, children testing the drifts with gloved hands, dogs bounding joyfully through powder that reaches their chests. The only footprints at first belong to birds, delicate hieroglyphs written across the snow's clean surface. At the edge of the market, the lamplighter appears again, lantern in hand. His usual brisk stride is gone. Instead, he moves carefully, each step sinking deep. He pauses beneath a lamp and looks around. The world he knew yesterday has vanished, the stalls, the voices, the firelight, all swallowed by the same soft silence. But even buried, the market seems alive, breathing faintly beneath its white blanket. From one doorway, the butcher Hollis emerges, rubbing his hands together. "By the saints," he mutters, "the Lord's put a featherbed over the whole city." He laughs and begins shoveling a path to his stall, though he knows there will be no trade today. A few houses away, the woman in the red shawl stands at her window, brushing frost from the glass. She lights a small candle and watches as the flame flickers against the snow outside. It looks as though the world itself is holding its breath to keep that little fire alive. The first sound that breaks the stillness is a child's laugh, high, bright, and startling. Then another. Soon, a handful of children appear, dragging makeshift sleds of wood and rope. They squeal as they slide down the sloped street, their joy echoing through the stillness. The sound wakes the city. Windows open, heads lean out. A baker calls to his apprentice to heat the ovens. A church bell begins to ring again. Not solemnly this time, but in rhythm with the laughter. Within the hour, life stirs back into motion. Men dig paths through the drifts. Women brush snow from window ledges to catch the weak light. In the market square, the great spruce tree stands radiant, its branches heavy but unbroken. The candles that burned the night before are buried now, yet when the wind moves just right, one catches air, a faint, flickering glow peeking through the snow, refusing to die. By midday, the lamplighter has cleared the base of the tree. He uncovers scraps from the day before: a broken toy soldier, a length of red ribbon, a half-buried orange gleaming like treasure in the frost. He gathers them gently, setting them aside. "Still here," he whispers, "still beautiful." As the city fully wakes, the market begins to live again, quietly, humbly. No stalls, no shouting, no clamor, just neighbors offering tea to one another, sharing bread, clearing snow together. The frost may have silenced London, but it has also softened it, binding strangers in simple work and shared warmth. And as the bells toll noon, a soft sunlight breaks through the clouds, washing the snow in gold. For a fleeting moment, the whole city glows. The market gleams like a field of diamonds, the sound of laughter carrying through the cold air. The morning after is not a beginning, nor quite an ending, only a breath between the two. But in that breath, London feels lighter. The frost will melt, the stalls will return, and the city will move on. Yet for now, it simply stands in silence, remembering. By the afternoon, the thaw has begun. Water trickles from the eaves and runs down the cobblestones in narrow silver veins. The snow, once flawless, now bears the muddy footprints of the city's return to life. Smoke curls once more from chimneys, rising lazily into the pale sky. And inside St. Martin's Church, where the bell had called so many to stillness the night before, the parish vicar sits before the fire, preparing his Christmas sermon. Reverend Josiah Pembleton is not a grand man. His collar is frayed, his spectacles smudged with soot from the hearth. The church he tends is draughty, the roof perpetually leaking, and his congregation when they come are not of means but of endurance. Yet his voice, though quiet, carries a warmth that fills even the coldest corners of his chapel. Today, as he sits beside the fire, he speaks not from the pulpit but from his chair, to a small crowd gathered for warmth as much as for worship. The pews are too cold, so the people sit, close to the hearth widows, chimney boys, a lamplighter still dusted with frost, the woman in the red shawl, even a handful of children from the Whitechapel choir. They huddle around the flames as though before a single, shared miracle. The vicar looks at them, faces worn and tender, hands clasped, eyes bright with quiet fatigue, and begins, "My friends," he says, his voice soft and measured, "it has been a hard year. Perhaps the next will be harder still. Yet every winter I am reminded that the Lord's first gift was not plenty, it was warmth. Not a crown, but a cradle. not a palace, but a fire. The fire crackles as he speaks. The flames lean forward, painting his face in amber light. And so we are gathered here not because we are rich, or strong, or certain. We are gathered because we are cold, and because, together, we are less so. Each time you share your bread, your coin, your coat, each time you light a candle for another, you preach the truest sermon of all. The lamplighter nods from the corner, his hand resting on his ladder. A child beside him whispers, "He means you, sir." The man only smiles, embarrassed. Reverend Pembleton continues, "I have seen kindness this week, quiet, humble kindness in the butcher who feeds the hungry, in the toy maker who carves joy from wood, in the singer whose song cuts through the fog. These small mercies are our cathedral walls. This," he gestures to the people, to the fire, "is the true Church of London." The words settle in the room like falling ash, soft, weighty, unforgettable. Outside, the wind whistles faintly through the stained glass. But within these walls, the fire holds steady. The children edge closer to the warmth. The woman in the red shawl pulls a length of ribbon from her pocket and ties it around the hearth's iron grate, a small decoration bright against the soot. As the sermon draws to its close, the vicar lowers his eyes to the fire and says, "Keep the flame, not just in your hearths, but in your hearts. For winter will always come again, but so will we." He makes the sign of the cross. No one applauds. Instead, they sit quietly, watching the flames twist and shimmer, each lost in thought. The silence feels sacred, and for a long time no one moves. When at last they rise to leave, they do so gently, as though afraid to disturb the air. The lamplighter holds the door open, letting in a gust of cold that makes the fire bow low before flaring higher once more. Outside, the street glows faintly beneath a thin veil of thawing snow. The people step into it one by one, their breaths mingling in the fading light. And behind them, inside the small church on the corner of St. Martin's Lane, the fire burns on steady, golden, eternal preaching to an empty room, as if the city itself were listening. The church has emptied, the fire has dimmed, and the streets have quieted once more. The fog rolls back in after dusk, patient as an old friend, cloaking the city in its ghostly shawl. Through it all, a single window glows faintly in a narrow lane off Drury Street, the kind of light one might mistake for a candle forgotten. But it is not forgotten. It belongs to a woman who keeps vigil each night, her gaze fixed upon the world beyond the glass. Her name is Mrs. Eleanor Briggs. She has lived in that same brick house for nearly 40 years, though the laughter that once filled it has long since gone. Her husband died in the cholera years, her sons in distant wars. Now she lives alone, her company the ticking of a clock and the slow sighing of the wind through the cracks of the window frame. Her hands, once nimble from embroidery, have grown stiff, the veins like blue thread beneath translucent skin. Yet each evening, without fail, she lights her candle and takes her chair by the window. From this perch, she sees everything: the lamplighter making his rounds, the market stalls closing, the milk boy chasing the last daylight down the hill. She never speaks to them, though she nods sometimes, a faint acknowledgement of their passing. In her silence, she is both witness and prayer. Tonight, the candle trembles in its brass holder, the flame bending with each draught that slips through the sill. The window pane is half frozen, rimmed with white lacework where her breath meets the glass. She traces it absent-mindedly with one finger, drawing circles that fade almost as soon as they form. On the table beside her sits a single letter, its paper yellowed, its ink faded. The return address bears the mark of a regiment long dissolved. She has read it so many times that she could recite every word by heart, yet she reads it again now, whispering softly, "My dearest Nell, if you are reading this, know that I have thought of you every day. The sea is wide, but I can still hear the church bells when I close my eyes. I promise I shall come home before the next winter snow." He never did, but the letter has outlived him. and so she keeps it near her candle, where the light can warm the ink if not the hand that wrote it. Outside, snow begins to fall again, not the thick, suffocating kind, but a fine dust that glitters in the lamplight. A group of carolers passes below, their voices faint, their harmony fragile yet bright. She leans closer to the glass, smiling. "Still singing," she murmurs, "still brave." One of the singers, a young woman with a red shawl, glances upward and spots the flicker of light. She lifts her hand and waves, just once. The widow waves back. It is a small gesture, almost nothing, but it is enough. When the carols fade into silence, Mrs. Briggs sets down the letter and cups her hands around the candle. Its flame dances, catching in her eyes like the memory of youth. "Another Christmas," she whispers to the empty room. "Another year of light." The clock chimes softly. She stands, pulling the curtains closed with slow, deliberate care, then places the candle on her bedside table. The shadows fold around her like a blanket. Outside, her window glows for a while longer, a small, steadfast flame against the sea of fog. To those passing through the dark, it is a comfort, a signal, a star. And when it finally goes out, the warmth lingers not just in her room, but in the hearts of those who saw it. For in the city of soot and sorrow, the widow's window is proof that love, once lit, never fully dies. At the eastern edge of London, where the market's laughter fades into the hum of machinery, the factories stand in silence. Their tall chimneys, once bellowing smoke like black banners, now exhale nothing but frost. The great iron wheels that had clattered and turned through every waking hour have stopped. It is Christmas Day, and for one day only, even the engines sleep. The air is strange without the constant drone. The streets around the mill feel too still, too wide. A thin snow lies on the cobblestones, unbroken except for the prints of a few stray dogs. The windows of the factory are glazed with ice. Behind them, the machines wait like slumbering beasts. Their gears gleam faintly in the pale light, dust motes drifting in the shafts of sun that filter through cracks in the brick. The workers' cottages nearby are brighter than they have been all year. For once, no smoke rises from the factory's roof, only from the chimneys of homes, where fires burn low but steady. Inside, men and women sit close together, their hands free of grease and iron dust. The air smells of bread instead of oil, of laughter instead of sweat. In one cottage, a man named Samuel Dunn stands by the window, still wearing the cap he wears to work. His wife, Clara, kneads dough at the table, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, her cheeks flushed from the heat of the hearth. On the floor, two children play with a toy train carved from scrap wood, a gift from the toymaker's stall at the market. Each time the wheels click against the boards, the younger child claps her hands, as though the whole world has come alive again. Samuel watches them for a long moment, a faint smile hidden beneath his beard. Then he turns his gaze back toward the factory. The silence unsettles him. All his life he has known its sound, the hiss of steam, the rattle of belts, the thunder of the looms. It is the rhythm of his heartbeat, the measure of his days. To hear nothing feels almost like standing in the aftermath of a storm. Clara notices his restlessness. "You can stop looking at it," she says gently. "It'll still be there tomorrow." He nods, but doesn't answer. He's thinking of the men who didn't live to see this quiet, the ones crushed by the gears, the ones buried in soot. He wonders if they would have liked this silence, or if they too would find it too heavy. The clock on the wall ticks softly. Clara hums as she works, an old hymn her mother used to sing. The sound fills the room the way light fills glass slowly, tenderly. Samuel sits down beside the fire, stretching his hands toward the warmth. "It's strange," he murmurs, "to be home while the world's still turning." "The world can turn without you for a day," Clara replies. "It'll do it slower, maybe, but it'll manage." He chuckles. "You always know what to say." "Not always," she says, dusting her hands, "but I know when to say nothing." Outside, a church bell rings faint, distant, golden. The children stop their play to listen. The sound carries through the air, slipping through the cracks of the cottage and brushing against the factory walls. The empty machines seem to hum in answer, the echo resonating through their steel hearts. Samuel closes his eyes. For the first time in years, the silence doesn't feel empty. It feels full of memory, of rest, of something almost holy. He reaches for Clara's hand and squeezes it gently. Beyond the cottage windows, the snow continues to fall, covering the factory roofs, softening every edge. For this one day, the city's engines rest, and London remembers what peace sounds like. The laughter of children, the hush of falling snow, and the quiet grace of a fire burning in the hearth. Evening falls once more, and the light that filters through London's fog is softer now, dim gold pressed against pale grey. The smoke of 100 chimneys curls lazily upward, and the smell of food, rare and comforting, drifts through the narrow streets. It is the day after Christmas, known among the poor as the Feast of Leftovers, a time not marked on any calendar, yet celebrated faithfully by those who have little and still find a way to share. In the tenement courts and the alleys behind the market, the feast begins with the simplest of gestures. A widow ladles the last of her soup into a second bowl and knocks at her neighbor's door. A sweeps boy carries a crust of bread wrapped in his scarf to a friend down the lane. Bits of pudding, scraps of ham, heel ends of loaves, nothing is too small to be offered. What began as charity becomes communion. At the corner of Covent Garden, a fire burns in a barrel, and a crowd gathers around it. The butcher Hollis is there, his cheeks ruddy from both cold and pride. He has brought the bones from yesterday's roasts, marrow rich and fragrant. Beside him stands the woman in the red shawl, carrying a tin of boiled potatoes. The lamplighter adds a jug of broth he saved from the church supper. Soon, a pot is set atop the fire, and the mixture begins to simmer, its scent carrying through the street like an invitation. Children come first, drawn by curiosity. They hover at the edge of the circle, their faces lit by the glow. "Come then," Hollis says, waving them closer. "If you can hold a spoon, you can hold a seat." A dozen small hands reach forward, cups and bowls, and even their palms outstretched. The soup tastes of everything, and nothing of salt, smoke, and kindness. Laughter follows quickly, the kind that bubbles up from full bellies and safe hearts. More people arrive as word spreads. The toy maker brings a handful of chestnuts. The printer's apprentice delivers a basket of broken bread. Miss Abernathy from Whitechapel arrives with her choir children in tow, their voices lifting into song as they eat. The melody mingles with the crackle of the fire, and for a few brief hours, the cold city hums with the rhythm of shared joy. Even the Queen's guards, passing through on their rounds, slow to watch. One slips a silver coin into the lamplighter's palm and murmurs, "Carry on." The lamplighter nods but does not stop stirring the pot. "Aye," he replies softly, "we are." When the meal is done, what remains is not much. A pot scraped clean, a few crumbs scattered in the snow, yet everyone leaves warmer, fuller, changed. The poor return to their rooms with light in their eyes. The weary walk home with slower, softer steps. As the crowd disperses, the woman in the red shawl tucks the empty pot under her arm and looks back at the fire. "It's strange," she says to Hollis, "how the scraps feed more than the feast." He smiles, brushing soot from his hands. "Aye, maybe that's what Christmas is, taking what's left and making it enough." The wind stirs, carrying the last notes of the choir's song down the narrow streets. The fire burns low, its glow flickering against the snow. In its light, the faces of the city, tired, lined, and beautiful, look softer, almost holy. And as the embers fade to red, one thing becomes clear. The Feast of Leftovers is not about what remains, but about what endures, the warmth that survives the cold, the kindness that lingers long after the fire dies, and the quiet miracle that the poorest among them have always known, that joy, when shared, never runs out. When the last embers of the Feast of Leftovers die out and the crowd drifts back to their lodgings, the market stands empty once more. The air has grown colder, the fog heavier. The city, weary from celebration, retreats behind shuttered windows and drawn curtains. But the market is not silent. Not entirely. There are those who swear that on nights like this, the nights after Christmas, when the air still smells faintly of smoke and spice, the market remembers. They say that if you walk its cobblestones after midnight, when the bells of St. Martin's have struck their final note, you will hear it breathe. The wood of the stalls creaks as if settling into old memories. The iron lanterns sway though there is no wind. The snow that lingers between the cracks glows faintly under the lamps, as though light has been trapped there, refusing to fade. A lamplighter once told of seeing a figure near the spruce, a woman in a red shawl. Though the living Clara was home asleep, she stood motionless, her face hidden, one hand outstretched toward the tree as if blessing it. When he called to her, she vanished into the mist, leaving only a single thread of crimson ribbon fluttering in the air. He never found it on the ground afterward. Perhaps, he said later, the market keeps its own saints. Others have their stories. A printer's apprentice swore he heard the faint clatter of wooden wheels, like a toy train moving across the snow, though he could see no track, no child, no maker. A butcher, cleaning his stall before dawn, claimed he smelled roasting meat and heard laughter, the laughter of the same hungry souls he'd fed days earlier. And one night, a widow walking home along the edge of the square looked up and saw dozens of small, flickering lights, candles hovering just above the snow. They moved as if carried by invisible hands, drifting in a circle before slowly fading, one by one. But not all the ghosts belong to the dead. Some belong to memory itself. If you listen closely enough, you can hear the echoes of what was, the cry of chestnuts, fresh chestnuts, rolling through the air, the whistle of the fiddler tuning his bow, the hush of snow settling over the crowd when the carolers began their song, the sound of coins clinking, the sigh of children dreaming of oranges. The ghosts of the market are not mournful. They are gentle content, even as if the laughter of the living had been stored in the very bones of the place. Each winter, they return to relive it all, the warmth, the kindness, the quiet triumph of survival. And each year, when the first frost arrives, the air grows thicker, the light dimmer, the feeling stronger. The market remembers what people forget. Tonight, as the city sleeps, the ghost of the market keeps vigil. The wind moves through the alleys like a hymn, brushing the stalls where hands once traded coins and warmth. Somewhere, faint but clear, a bell rings, not from St. Martin's this time, but from the unseen heart of the square itself. The sound ripples outward, through the snow and fog, touching the roofs and windows of all who once walked here. It is not a summons. It is a blessing, a reminder that joy, once made, does not vanish with the morning. It lingers, soft and unseen, carried in breath, in laughter, in memory. And when the dawn finally comes, the frost will sparkle brighter than before, and the market will look just a little more alive. Those who pass through it on their way to work will not know why the air feels so kind, or why their hearts feel just a little lighter. But the market will know. It has kept its promise. It remembers. The new year draws near, and though much of London has resumed its restless rhythm, the market still carries a hush within its stones. The frost has begun to recede, revealing the dark cobblestones beneath, slick with thaw and light. The snow that once silenced the city has melted into rivulets that murmur softly through the gutters, small, secret songs of the passing winter. And yet, as the bells of St. Martin's toll in the distance, another sound rises to join them, faint at first, like breath on glass, then stronger, clearer. The children's choir of Whitechapel has returned. They come through the square, bundled in mismatched scarves and coats, their cheeks flushed pink from the wind. Miss Abernathy leads them, her gloved hands clasped together for warmth, her eyes bright despite the exhaustion that clings to her shoulders. "Come now," she calls softly. "The cold can't catch you if you keep singing." The children laugh and obey, their voices ringing out through the empty streets like the return of spring itself. Their song is not a carol this time. It is something older, a hymn that has no proper name, passed down through the parish and sung by generations who have known both hunger and hope. The notes rise gently, like smoke from a chimney, curling upward into the pale sky. And as they sing, the city seems to pause again, caught in the spell of memory. Shopkeepers open their doors and lean into the cold, smiling. A seamstress in her window lowers her needle to listen. The lamplighter, halfway through his evening rounds, stops to rest his ladder and watch. Even the river seems quieter, the steady slap of water against the docks softening beneath the music. Miss Abernathy raises her hand, guiding her small choir with quiet precision. "Lift your hearts, my loves," she whispers between verses. "Lift them high, higher than the fog." They do, and the sound they make is no longer small. It fills the market, fills the spaces left behind by laughter and loss, fills the very air that only a week ago had carried the ghosts of the past. The voices tremble and blend, imperfect, but radiant. When the song ends, silence follows, the kind that feels full, not empty. Then a single pair of hands begins to clap. It is the toy maker, his apron dusted with sawdust, tears glimmering in the lines of his face. Soon others join him. The butcher, the printer's apprentice, the lamplighter, the woman in the red shawl. The applause swells until it sounds almost like the sea, crashing softly against the stone. Miss Abernathy bows her head, her smile tender and shy. "They've sung better," she says modestly, but no one believes her. For this song, sung to a weary city that needed reminding, is not about perfection. It is about persistence. When the applause fades, the butcher steps forward, carrying a basket wrapped in cloth. "For the little ones," he says, unveiling loaves of warm bread. The woman in the red shawl adds apples, the lamplighter a handful of coins. One by one, the market gathers itself around the choir, not to watch, but to give. The children eat, their laughter echoing off the frozen walls, their voices bright as bells. Above them, the last of the snow clouds breaks, and sunlight spills through, turning the puddles to mirrors and the frost to glitter. Miss Abernathy looks up at the sky and breathes deeply. For the first time all winter, the air tastes like promise. And somewhere, deep within the stones of the market, something stirs, not ghost or memory this time, but life. The laughter, the voices, the music, all of it gathers, like the first bloom beneath snow. For as long as the children sing, the market will live. And as long as the market remembers, the city will never truly grow cold. When the last notes of the children's song fade into the pale afternoon, the market returns to its soft, breathing stillness. The crowds thin. The stalls stand quiet beneath the soot-streaked eaves. The frost no longer glitters but lingers in thin veins along the edges of gutters and signs, like the last traces of an old dream reluctant to end. The city exhales, slow and deep. It feels older now, older, but gentler. Along the northern side of the market, past the narrow stone steps that lead toward the river, runs a small lane that few notice. It has no sign, no formal name on any map. The locals simply call it the Street of Memories. It is little more than a passageway between two crooked rows of houses, paved unevenly and lit by only a handful of lamps. Yet somehow it carries the hush of centuries, as if every joy and sorrow of London has walked there once and left its echo behind. On this grey morning, an old man makes his way down that street. His name is Henry Blythe, though no one remembers it anymore. His back is bent, his coat patched and faded, his boots leaving shallow prints in the damp snow. Once, long ago, he had a stall in the market, a small table of books and broadsheets, where he sold stories to passers-by who could afford to dream. But the years took his strength, then his trade, and finally his place among the noise of the living. Now he wanders, as he always does on the days after Christmas, searching not for goods but for ghosts. He pauses before a boarded shop front, its paint peeling, its windows fogged from the cold. The sign above it, barely legible, reads Finch and Sons, portraits and daguerreotypes. Henry smiles faintly. He remembers the photographer there, the man who captured faces in silver and light. He had once stood before that lens himself, holding a book in one trembling hand, hoping to appear wiser than he felt. "I wonder where that picture's gone," he murmurs. "Maybe still waiting somewhere, in a box that remembers me better than I do." He moves on. The next doorway bears a ribbon nailed above the lintel, red once, now darkened to brown. It stirs faintly in the wind, whispering against the wood. He touches it with the gentleness of one greeting an old friend. "Still here," he says softly, "still holding." Further along, the sound of music reaches him faint, carried from the market square. It is the children again, finishing another verse of their song. The notes slip between the houses, curling through the narrow lane like smoke. Henry stops, closes his eyes, and lets it wash over him. He can almost see the faces, his wife long gone, his friends from the stalls, even the lamplighter who used to share his pipe after dusk. They are all there, in the music, alive as memory. When he opens his eyes again, snow has begun to fall, light and steady. Each flake lands on the cobblestones without a sound. He tips his head back, catching one on his cheek, and smiles. "You, see?" he whispers to no one. "We're all still walking here, all of us." By the time he reaches the end of the street, the lamps have begun to glow, faint halos in the mist. He turns for one last look. The snow has softened the edges of everything. The shutters, the doors, even the cracks in the walls. The street of memories looks almost new again, as if the past itself has forgiven the present. Henry touches his hat, bows slightly to the ghosts, and disappears into the fog. Behind him, the faint sound of the choir drifts through the air once more. It is no longer just song but benediction, a melody that threads through every street and every heart that remembers. And if one were to listen closely, they might hear something else beneath it, the quiet footstep of an old man, walking forever through the street of memories, carrying with him everything the city has ever loved and lost. The year's final night comes softly, wrapped in a blanket of fog and frost. The sky above London is the colour of pewter, and the city's rooftops glimmer faintly beneath a skin of ice. It is a night neither fully alive nor dead, a night caught between remembrance and expectation. The market lies mostly empty now. The great spruce stands silent in the square, its ornaments dulled by weather, its candles long melted down to stubs. Yet still, there is one light left. In a window overlooking the market, the same window where Mrs. Briggs once kept her vigil, a single candle burns. Its flame trembles in the draught, dancing along the glass like a heartbeat refusing to fade. Down below, the cobblestones reflect its glow, turning each patch of ice into a shard of gold. For those who pass through, that small flame becomes a sign, a promise that the year has not yet gone dark. The lamplighter stands beneath it, watching. He has finished his rounds, his ladder resting against his shoulder, his breath rising in pale clouds. The world feels still not empty, but waiting. Around him, the city mutters softly, the creak of shutters, the distant echo of hooves, the whisper of wind through chimney pots. Somewhere nearby, a clock strikes 11. 1 hour until the year exhales. He tips his cap toward the candle. "Well then," he murmurs, "you and me, we'll see it out together." Across the square, the butcher Hollis appears, a scarf wrapped around his neck, his boots crunching through frost. He carries a parcel under one arm, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "Evening, friend," he calls. "Couldn't let the year end without one more delivery." The lamplighter smiles. "You work more than the sun itself," Hollis chuckles, setting the parcel on a doorstep. "Only when there's kindness to deliver." He looks up at the candle, then back at the lamplighter. Strange, isn't it? The whole city asleep, and yet that one flame keeps watch. "Reminds me of church, or of home." "It's both," says the lamplighter quietly. "It's what's left when everything else goes out. They stand in companionable silence. A few windows glow faintly across the square, faint flickers of life behind heavy curtains. The faint scent of pine drifts from the tree, mingling with the sweetness of coal smoke. Then, from somewhere down the street, a voice begins to sing. A woman's voice, low and unsteady, carrying a hymn through the cold. Abide with me. Fast falls the eventide. The lamplighter removes his cap. Hollis closes his eyes. The sound floats above the rooftops, thin but strong, joined after a few lines by others, a handful of late workers, perhaps, or the Whitechapel children come once more. The melody builds softly, echoing off the stone and glass until the square seems filled with invisible company. As the last verse fades, the church bell strikes midnight. Its toll rolls out like a wave, shaking frost from the eaves and scattering a few startled birds into the fog. The new year begins not with fanfare, but with breath, a deep, shared sigh across the city. The lamplighter lifts his lantern one final time, holding it beside the lone candle in the window. The two flames flicker together, one high above, one here on the ground, and for a moment their light merges into one steady glow. Another year, he whispers. May it be gentler than the last. The candle quivers, then steadies once more. The butcher nods, tightening his scarf. It will be, he says softly, because we remember. And so the two men stand beneath the falling snow, watching the last light of December burn against the window pane, fragile, steadfast, eternal. When dawn comes, it will fade into the grey of morning, but its warmth will linger in the air, unseen yet certain, like the promise of kindness waiting to begin again. Morning rises pale and slow over London, the first light of January slipping through a thin veil of mist. The city exhales, chimneys sighing smoke, streets groaning back to life, horses stamping frost from their hooves. The great square that had glittered for weeks with light and laughter now lies quiet beneath a sheen of thawing ice. The market stalls stand bare, their canvas covers folded, their tables damp with melted snow. Only the faintest scent of spice and candle wax remains, clinging to the stones like a memory reluctant to leave. Yet even in this stillness, something moves, a sound, soft as breath, rising through the cold. It begins faintly, so faintly that one might mistake it for the rustle of the wind. But then it grows clearer. A violin, playing somewhere beyond the fog. The melody winds through the streets, curling around the corners of shuttered shops and empty doorways, threading its way back to the market. It is the fiddler from Snow Hill. His bow is frayed, his signed gloves fingerless, his hat pulled low against the cold. He stands at the foot of the spruce tree, its branches bare now but still dignified, as if holding court over the sleeping city. He does not play for coins. There is no one yet to give them. He plays because silence, to him, feels unfinished. The tune is simple, part lullaby, part prayer. The notes drift upward into the chill morning air, catching on every surface like frost. One by one, people begin to stir. A milkman stops his cart to listen. A seamstress, carrying a bundle of mending, pauses at the edge of the square. The lamplighter, weary from his night's work, leans against his ladder and lets the sound wash over him. Even the butcher, stepping out to sweep his threshold, finds his broom stilling in time with the rhythm. Then another voice joins the violin, the clear, thin whistle of a boy, one of the Whitechapel singers. He hums along, half shy, half bold. A woman adds harmony from a nearby window, her voice tired, but true. Soon, others pick it up, a dockworker on his way to the river, a group of girls carrying bread from the bakery, even the carriage driver rolling past with his reins in hand. The music spreads, threading through the fog, gathering the city piece by piece. It's not a song anyone planned, but something born from breath and memory, the sound of a city remembering its kindness. By the time the church bells chime 9, the square is alive again. The fiddler lowers his bow and smiles, his eyes bright. You see? He murmurs to no one. It never really ends. The lamplighter steps forward. dropping a coin into his case. "Play another," he says quietly. "For the new year." The fiddler nods and begins anew, this time a waltz light, playful, spinning through the frost like the promise of spring. The people linger, clapping softly, their laughter rising with the tune. The market breathes again. High above, the sun struggles through the fog, its light pale but persistent. It glints off puddles, mirrors in the cobblestones that reflect the faces gathered below. For a moment, London itself seems to smile, weary, battered, but unbroken. When the last note fades, the sound does not vanish. It lives in the footfalls of the crowd, in the laughter that trails behind them, in the hush that follows a silence warm enough to hold. And though the market will close again, and the frost will return, the music will never leave. It lingers in the walls and windows, in the stones and snow, waiting for the next winter to wake it once more. And when it does, when the lamps are lit, and the first carol rises, through the dark London will remember. The market will live again, the songs will echo through the fog, and the city will glow from within, warmed by the music that never ends.